Chapter 1182. His vision changed rapidly. When he came back to his senses, Han Xiao found that he was already floating in the outer space of a giant planet, looking down at the planet under his feet. Looking down from the starry sky, the planet was vast and green in color. Brightly lit city areas covered the surface of the planet, and it seemed to be a flourishing civilization. Through the technology of the orbiting satellite, Han Xiao could roughly judge that this civilization was at the surface stage. It had both science and magic systems and was trying to develop into an interstellar civilization. The lights on the surface flickered as if someone had pressed the fast-forward button. Everything in front of him was like a fleeting moment, condensed into an unknown number of days and nights. In Han Xiao's perception, it seemed that only 3 seconds had passed. At this moment, it seemed to have reached some kind of node, and time suddenly returned to normal. The next moment, the planet under his feet changed. He saw that in a city area, the ground shook violently. Then, a huge 7-fingered palm broke out of the ground. A titan-like giant used its broad back to break free from the ground that covered the top of its head. It rose from the ground like a pillar that supported the sky, bringing along large pieces of land. It was like a person lifting a tablecloth from the middle. The buildings on the ground were like dishes on the tablecloth, collapsing and shattering together with it. Climbing out of the ground, this grayish-white giant showed a body that was thousands of meters tall. Just the aftermath of breaking out of the ground destroyed more than half of the city. He walked toward the mountains, and every step he took could cause a chain earthquake. Countless rocks seemed to be attracted by some kind of force, climbing up his body along his legs, compressing and condensing into layers of dark brown protective shells, as if he was wearing a suit of armor. Soon, the civilization's fighter jets arrived at the scene and fired wildly at the giant. Countless flames exploded on the giant's body, but the damage was minimal. The giant waved his hand and compressed the air, causing a surging shock wave to sweep across. The fighter jets were crushed into pieces of scrap metal in midair and exploded into fireworks in midair. At the same time, Han Xiao saw similar situations in more than a dozen places. Huge life forms walked out of the ground one after another. Each of them had a different appearance. There were giants, behemoths, and some indescribable life forms. Some were in the mountains and forests, some were in the yellow desert, and some were in the deep trenches. It was as if they were collectively waking up. A disaster like the awakening of the ancient gods? Han Xiaoxin stirred. This was a rare type of disaster. The so-called ancient god was a general term that generally referred to powerful individuals. They did not necessarily have to be living beings. Even mechanical bodies could be counted as such. To put it simply, some powerful individuals were sleeping on a planet. After spending countless years in hibernation, they woke up again for some reason and dealt a devastating blow to the civilization that was born on the planet. There were 2 main reasons for this. One was that in ancient times, the ancient gods descended from outer space and fell into a deep slumber. They were guests from outer space. The other was that the ancient gods were native life forms of the planet. The latter would basically have some kind of connection with the religious system of the planet. If he buried an apostle weapon of the size of giant King Kong on a planet and set it to wake up after a few 100,000 years, if the planet gave birth to a civilization, this situation could also be considered as the awakening of the ancient gods. While Han Xiao was thinking, the images did not stop. Time accelerated again. The civilization used all kinds of modern weapons, but the results were minimal. Even mushrooms could not kill these ancient gods. They seemed to have different powers. Other than counterattacking, they would not deliberately attack the civilization's troop. Instead, they constantly used their power to change the planet's environment. There were volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, continental plate drift, magnetic field changes, global temperature rise, and other disasters. They seemed to want to rebuild a planet that was suitable for their own survival. and these drastic environmental changes were fatal to the civilization's races. Therefore, they could not coexist. They could only use war weapons to attack again and again in an attempt to stop the actions of the ancient gods. During this period, more ancient gods woke up. They seemed to be the ancient masters of this planet. The civilization's population decreased sharply. They gave up city after city and retreated to the last continent where the ancient gods were the rarest. It was called the Final Land. However, at this moment, a turn for the better appeared. Because they knew that the ancient gods had awakened from underground, the civilization spared no effort to dig the earth all over the world in an attempt to capture the sleeping individuals. In the end, they actually found an individual tens of thousands of meters underground in the Final Land. However, this individual was long dead, and only the body did not rot and shrink. The civilization was overjoyed and organized a research team to find the weakness of the ancient gods. However, the more they researched, the more despair they felt. All kinds of evidence showed that with their current weapons, there was no way they could kill the ancient gods. In Han Zhao's eyes, these ancient gods were at the calamity grade. They seemed to be a rare race of life in the universe. Because of their extraordinary racial talents and enormous vitality, they were stronger than ordinary calamity grades, mainly because they were very tanky. It was not difficult for a calamity grade super to wipe out a surface civilization. To this civilization, so many special calamity grade life forms were far beyond their ability to deal with. In despair, someone suddenly had an idea and made a suggestion. Since the existing weapons were not enough, could they think of a way to modify the corpse of this ancient god and use it as a weapon to fight other ancient gods? In a situation where there was nothing they could do, the civilization naturally did not have many objections. They could only treat it as a last resort. However, there were differences in the control method. Normal remote control could not adapt to high-intensity battles, and the neural connection could not bear the load on the nerves of the huge body. It would take at least tens of thousands of people to barely qualify, which would definitely drag down the flexibility. The artificial intelligence technology had not developed to the level of actual combat. In the end, this civilization decided to carry out many plans together. One of them was to develop a soul transfer device to let their souls leave their weak bodies and enter the corpse of this ancient god, to control it. This way, they would be able to maximize the combat strength of the ancient god when he was alive. Furthermore, there was a chance that he would retain the authority that everyone coveted. This déjà vu. Ultraman? The corner of Han Zhao's mouth twitched. At this moment, his vision suddenly zoomed in, and he came to a huge laboratory. He saw that the corpse of the ancient god was raised high, and layers of scaffolding were suspended in various parts to be modified and implanted with all kinds of mechanical weapons. On the ground, there were teams of death warriors in white. A mechanical socket was implanted in the back of their heads, and cables extended out. They were all connected to a large device in midair. This large device was suspended in front of the head of the ancient god corpse, and the launch port was a black crystal mirror aimed at the glabella of the corpse. Gotcha! Han Zhao saw the experimenter in the control panel push a wrench. The next moment there was the sound of people falling to the ground. All the death warriors in white fell to the ground, and dark light entered the device through the cables. Then, a strange black light shot out of the crystal mirror and entered the glabella of the ancient god corpse. Time passed, but there was no reaction from the ancient god corpse. Many of the experimenters looked depressed. But at this time, the whole underground laboratory suddenly shook, and cracks spread on the walls. More than a dozen huge tentacles smashed the walls, and in the rolling soil, a huge figure came out from the ground. It was one of the ancient gods. It had a half-plant body, like an enlarged combination of a man-eating flower and an octopus, and it used the ground as its swimming pool. However, at this moment, the ancient god corpse suddenly opened its eyes. At this moment, Han Zhao's vision blurred, and he returned to the office of the spaceship. The illusion brought by Bold Explorer came to an abrupt end. He recalled and thought to himself, "It feels like there's a lot of information this time." If he was not wrong, the large device in the illusion was the prototype of the Soul Swapper, and the crystal mirror that acted as the launch port was the Soul Swapper in his hands. He did not know what happened to it over the long years, but it finally became a space wonder. Recalling the appearance of the civilization in the illusion, Han Xiao searched the database, but there was no matching record. Even the database of the Spacetime Research Institute, which focused on collecting information about lost civilizations, did not have any records. Looks like this is an undiscovered civilization. It might be in the unexplored universe, or it might be an even older lost civilization. Could it be from the same era as the civilization that created the domino virus? I wonder what happened to this civilization later on. Han Xiao was quite curious, but it was a pity that Bold Explorer had a cooldown time of 14 days. The next time he could use it would be half a month later. According to the illusion, the plan to use the Soul Swapper to control the ancient god corpse seemed to have succeeded. The souls of the Death Warriors should have fused into one, and although the corpse did not decay, the souls had already dissipated. Therefore, there was not much resistance, and the body successfully accommodated the new souls. At that moment, an idea exploded in Han Zhao's mind like lightning piercing through the darkness. Hela had interrogated the souls of the Soul Swap twins, and with Fu Ding's recent tests, he had a preliminary understanding of the Soul Swapper's effect. He knew that this thing could transfer souls and ignore the rejection of the body to a large extent. As long as the target was a body that was still alive but without a soul, it could easily revive it. In that case, Han Xiao flipped his hand and took out the spacetime amber. His eyes gradually lit up. He suddenly realized that the functions of these two things seemed to be a perfect match. The Soul Swapper seemed to have a special use in his hands. Black Star, what are you laughing at? Why are you laughing so? Fu Ding, who was sitting across the table, wanted to say something but stopped. He was too embarrassed to say the word perverted out loud for fear of being grilled. Ahem. Han Xiao hurriedly stopped his imagination, coughed, and said, "I thought of something happy." "What is it?" "My wife gave birth." "Pfft, it's none of your business." Han Xiao almost blurted out, but he came back to his senses and waved the Soul Swapper in his hand. "I'll take this for my experiments first. I'll give it back to you when I'm done." "I'm fine with that." Fu Ding hesitated and said, "Actually, I have something that I need your help with. You know that although psychics can transfer souls, the risk is extremely high. That's why Chen Xing has always been in my body. However, with this universal treasure, there's no danger anymore. I plan to get her out." "What for? Isn't it good to have sex? You make it sound like you've tried it before." Fu Ding was speechless. Han Xiao scratched his nose and changed the topic. "So, you want me to find a body for Chen Xing, right?" "Not just that." Fu Ding was a little embarrassed. "She said that she doesn't want to use someone's second-hand goods, so she wants to customize a body. She wants to choose the body and appearance." "There's nothing I can do." Han Xiao waved his hand and rejected. "I'm just an ordinary mechanic. I can make machines, but forget about making humans. Do you think I'm the creator? Can't you use biochemical muscles, nanonerves, and so on to create a bionic human?" "You can, but that requires the use of a chip. The consciousness you insert is in a virtual intelligence format, which is not compatible with the souls of psychics like you." "Can't you simulate the structure of the brain without the chip?" "It can, but I can't guarantee what the side effects will be." "Then what should I do?" Fu Ding was a little troubled. "I can't possibly kill a young and beautiful female creature just to find a body for her. In my opinion, you can find a pet first and transfer your wife into it temporarily. Wouldn't that be perfect? She's saying that you're becoming more and more perverted. Fu Ding narrowed his eyes. I think so too. What's in your heads? Han Xiao rolled his eyes. You're the only one in the entire army who has no right to talk about me like that. Fu Ding shook his head and said with a serious expression, let's talk about something serious. I used the soul swapper to separate the parasitic soul from Aesop's body. He has recovered. Oh, then get him to come see me. I want to see how he's doing. He's already outside the door. Fu Ding greeted, and the door was pushed open. Aesop walked in, and when he saw Han Xiao, he could not help but smile bitterly. Han Xiao sized Aesop up and said, Old man, are there any side effects? No, I'm very normal now. Aesop sat down with a complicated expression. In the end, he sighed and said, Black Star, thank you for this time. If not for you, Ames would definitely have been implicated by me. Don't say that. If not for me, you wouldn't have been plotted against. Han Xiao shook his head. Sigh, I've lived for so long. It doesn't matter whether I die or not. I just don't want my death to involve Ames. I understand her temper. In a fit of anger, she will definitely do something that she will regret for the rest of her life. You really guessed right, Han Xiao thought to himself. What do you plan to do now? Although this is someone else's scheme, Ames will be on guard in the future. Even if you want to leave, you won't be able to do so easily. What else can I do? I can only continue to stay here. Aesop smiled bitterly. He had originally agreed with Black Star that after this matter was over, he would continue to wander the world and seek death everywhere. However, the plan could not keep up with the changes. If Black Star had not informed Ames, he would not be in such a terrible situation. However, Black Star had saved him, so he naturally had no reason to blame Black Star. Han Xiao rubbed his chin and suddenly said, Actually, I have a perfect solution. Aesop's eyes lit up and he could not wait. Tell me. Actually, it's very simple. Now that the soul swapper is in my hands, I can transfer your soul into the body of an expert. Then, you can follow others and go on adventures. Although you won't be able to control your body, it's better than staying at home and rotting. Also, your safety is guaranteed. Aesop's eyes lit up. He was a little tempted. That's a good idea, but what about my body? Simple. I can use the spacetime amber to seal it, but I suggest that you contribute it and let others use it temporarily. I happen to have a candidate here. What candidate? Han Xiao pointed at Fu Ding and chuckled. You enter Fu Ding's body, and Chen Xing uses your body. Isn't that the perfect plan? Hearing this, the two of them shuddered at the same time. When Fu Ding thought of his cute wife turning into an old man, he wanted to poke his eyes out. When Aesop thought of Fu Ding's habit of having sex, he subconsciously clamped his legs together in fear. I'd rather die, the two of them said at the same time. Planet Finn, Beyond Grade A Association Headquarters. Today was the day of the regular meeting. Many Beyond Grade A remote projections arrived at the venue and waited outside the conference room for the meeting to begin. They formed a circle in twos and threes, chatting with each other. Have you heard? Black Star fought with the Mecha Empire again not long ago. This time, he actually won, Sun Hunter said as he floated in midair. We're not uninformed. Of course we know. Kant crossed his arms and sighed. Do you still remember the battle we watched a few months ago? At that time, Black Star could only fight to a draw with the Mecha Empire at most. How long has it been since then? He can actually defeat Manison head-on. How scary. Hee, Manison suffered a huge loss this time. I feel good. A neutral mechanic laughed happily. Kasui shook his head. I know the strength of the Mecha Empire very well. He used so many trump cards, but he still lost in the end. It's unbelievable. I watched the recording. Black Star seems to have learned some new method that countered the Mecha Empire. Serene snorted. He's just lucky. I disagree with your evaluation of his luck. You're questioning my professionalism. Secret Master was expressionless. Serene was speechless, and his expression turned ugly. I'm just being stubborn. Don't expose me. Speaking of which, I don't know if I'm wrong. The 3 beyond grade A weapons that the Mecha Empire took out in the recording, are they the 3 guys we know? Milizaus asked hesitantly. As soon as this was said, the entire place fell silent. Everyone's expression was a little strange. As veteran beyond grade as, they naturally knew who the Mecha Empire's defeated opponents were. Some of them were even friends with them. Now that they saw their old acquaintances being modified alive by the Mecha Empire, many of them did not feel good. Although living modification was not a taboo, it was somewhat inappropriate in the circle of beyond grade, as because everyone had great strength. Once someone who used living modification appeared, all the beyond grade as would more or less be wary of this person, afraid that they would be treated as prey. I saw that Black Star captured 2 people in the recording. When he comes later, we can ask him. Kant shrugged. At this moment, another projection descended not far away. Everyone turned their heads to look at it. Yo, speaking of Black Star is here. That guy is here. Chapter 1183. As soon as Han Zhao's remote projection arrived at the venue, he could feel many surprised and admiring gazes looking at him from all directions. Black Star. Hearing someone call him, Han Zhao turned around and saw Kasuyi and the others coming over. They were all familiar with the peak beyond grade as. Why did you call me? Hee, not bad. Kant looked at him and laughed. You should say that to the Mecha Empire. He needs comfort right now. Han Zhao raised his eyebrows. Ha ha, I haven't seen you in a while, and you've become worse. Everyone laughed. In the circle, Han Zhao did not have a certain sense of distance like the Mecha Empire. He was more popular, and most people were willing to be friends with him. Kasuyi smiled helplessly and asked, Black Star, I heard that you captured the troops of the Mecha Empire. Those 2 beyond grade as, did you find out where they came from? Han Zhao shook his head and casually revealed Manason's background. He roughly explained the felon technology and emphasized, their brains were messed up by Manason. They can't remember anything from their past. Sigh, the 2 people you captured should be Suller and Kane. I used to have a good relationship with Kane, but that was a long time ago. Milizaus sighed. For a rare and talented big treasure like him, he hated experiments on physical modification the most. Before he became a beyond grade A, there would occasionally be dragon cubs who went missing and were captured by interstellar hunters to be sold for money. Most of the time, they were sold to some research institutions to study their racial characteristics, so he was very sensitive to this. Everyone introduced the lives of Suller and Kane. The former was the 2nd treasure, and the latter was the 4th treasure. They used to be very powerful beyond grade as, but because of different reasons, they provoked the Mecha Empire and eventually disappeared. Who would have thought that when they met again, their old friends had already become puppets? Many people present sighed. Speaking of which, not long ago you weren't the Mecha Empire's, at most you were on par with him. Why did the Mecha Empire use their trump card this time, and let you take advantage of it? Do you have some tricks? Sun Hunter asked. Nothing, I was just lucky. Han Zhao subconsciously said humbly, but as soon as he said that, he noticed that everyone's gaze became strange. Everyone looked at Secret Master and gestured with their chins, indicating that it was his turn to perform. However, Secret Master was indifferent, as if he did not hear Han Zhao. Serene could not help but whisper, Why didn't you refute him like before? Aren't you a professional? Secret Master glanced at him. I'll give him face. I see, Serene nodded, but then he suddenly realized something. Wait, then why didn't you give me face just now? There's no need. Veins popped out on Sieren's forehead. We're all peak beyond grade and you're so blatantly treating us differently. So, you're afraid of offending Blackstar, but you're not afraid of offending me, right? Yeah. Secret Master was confused. Where did you get the confidence to ask this question? He was confused. Blackstar, that unlucky guy. Never mind that his luck can't be shaved, but you're so lucky, don't you know it? Sieren was speechless. He pointed at Secret Master and could not say anything. You're too much. Can't you pretend to coax me? The group chatted for a while, and it was time for the meeting to begin. Everyone entered the venue and took their seat. At this time, Manison's remote projection arrived just in time. After arriving, he did not look at anyone, ignored everyone's weird gazes, and walked straight into the venue. He had arrived on time because he did not want to meet Han Shao in advance. He did not even need to think to know how Black Star would show off in front of him. When he passed by Han Zhao's seat, Manison purposely ignored him. He thought that Han Shao would take the opportunity to mock him, but Black Star seemed to have changed his personality and completely ignored him. This made Manison, who was mentally prepared, feel like he had missed. He was not used to it and even had the urge to initiate a conversation. Noticing Manison's gaze, Han Shao did not even look at him. You think I'm mocking you, but I'm deliberately ignoring you. This is still a form of mockery. Suppressing the urge to talk, Manison coughed and said with a deep voice, I hereby announce the start of this meeting. Everyone, before he finished, Han Shao stood up and slowly said, I have something to inform everyone. Everyone's gazes turned to look at him. Han Shao leaned forward, pressed his hands on the table and said, Some of you might not know about my experience a while ago, so I'll explain it here. I have a personal grudge with the Modo civilization, and it originated from the Kundi race incident during the second exploration phase. Modo induced the native civilization to ambush the Red Empire, causing the flames of war. My Black Star Corps also participated in the battle and lost many of my men. Later, the Kundi race submitted to me and accepted my protection. Thus, I also took on the mission of finding the culprit. Originally, this war could have been completely avoided, but Modo's scheme made us lose the chance to coexist peacefully. My grudge with Modo is partly because of the personal grudge of the losses of my troops, and partly because of morality. Modo and I are enemies, and it's understandable that we hurt each other. I also accept the casualties that Modo caused to my troops on the front lines, but Modo's scheme behind the scenes. It's fine if it's just a scheme. After all, it's also a feasible method. However, he shouldn't have involved this matter with another unrelated beyond grade A. As he said that, Han Shao pointed at Ames. Seeing that everyone was listening quietly, he said, The Dragon Queen had nothing to do with this. The Dragon Emperor originally had nothing to do with this, but Modo wanted to threaten me by kidnapping her adoptive father. Some of the people present even helped Modo. As he said that, Han Shao glanced at Manison. Without waiting for Manison to speak, he immediately continued. This kind of behavior is very despicable, and it's completely ignoring everyone else. Therefore, the Dragon Emperor decided to intervene in the war and teach Modo a lesson. I've also decided to go personally. Han Shao paused, looked around, and said with a deep voice, I've finished speaking. I'm done. Who agrees? Who objects? The whole place fell silent. Everyone looked at each other with strange expressions. This was because before the flickering war, the agreement that everyone had made in this room was that the Beyond Grade as would stay out of it. Their troops would be able to get some benefits, or they would be able to take revenge in some special cases. However, it was a mutual agreement that they would not personally participate in the war. Black Star's request was obviously going to be the first to break this agreement. Manison narrowed his eyes and said, I don't think that's possible. You're the vice president. If you take the lead to violate the agreement, won't the principle of our united front lose its binding force? Today you found a reason to do it personally, and we agreed. Tomorrow, I'll also find a reason to do it personally, and you'll also agree, right? As long as you find a reason, anyone can do whatever they want. Then, is there still a need for the association to exist? Old people really don't know how to be flexible. Han Shao clicked his tongue. How long has it been since our association was established? And there are already signs of the system becoming rigid. This is very much in line with your style as a leader. Manason's eyelids twitched, but he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It was still the familiar formula, still the familiar feeling. Black Star was indeed still that Black Star, an old eunuch. Han Shao ignored him, looked around, and said, "My suggestion is not only because of personal grudges but also because of the association's prestige and the principle of the united front." "What do you mean?" Kant on the side consciously played the role of a supporting actor. "What the Mecha Empire said does make some sense, but for the specific problem and the specific analysis, we have to understand the nature of this matter first. In order to deal with me, Moto casually schemed against an unrelated Beyond Grade A, and this Beyond Grade A is also a member of the association. What kind of behavior is this? Let me assume, let's use the Limitless Financial Group as an example. For example, I want to embezzle the assets of the Limitless Financial Group, and I know that Manason is a major shareholder, so I kidnap Manason, torture him, and ask Sorokin to sign some unequal agreements. What would your reaction be?" Sorokin was suddenly cued and was a little confused. "You guys can talk about your own things. Why did you call me? If that's really the case, I'll probably be overjoyed. I'll have one less dog to share my money with, I'll be very angry." Han Shao then looked at Manason and said, "If you get out, and I'm saying if. After all, everyone knows that if you fall into my hands, there's no way you can escape. Anyway, you'll definitely take revenge afterward, right?" "That's right." Manason's mouth twitched imperceptibly. "See, this is human nature. It's very similar to the situation I encountered." Han Shao clapped his hands and said with a deep voice, "But why did the association do the opposite and stop this kind of behavior? Wasn't our original intention of establishing the association to give the Beyond Grade as a better future and a higher status? Why did we put shackles on ourselves instead?" As he said that, Han Shao walked behind Manason, put his hands on his shoulders, and said loudly, "The principle of a united front is to fight. When a member is in trouble, everyone will come to help. The Moto civilization attacked an unrelated Beyond Grade of first, breaking the rules first. If we don't punish them, what will others think? Will they feel that the association is restricting the revenge of the Beyond Grade so they are more confident and bold to attack a Beyond Grade A? What is this? If we want a higher status other than establishing order for ourselves to make the galactic society feel safe, we also have to make the outsiders respect the Beyond Grade as. This is the way to control the right to speak, not the wrong way to put the cart before the horse. Therefore, although the purpose of the association is to mediate, we have to immediately punish the Moto civilization for their provocative behavior. Otherwise, we'll lose the prestige of the entire Beyond Grade A class. This is the true meaning of our united front. The slogan of advance and retreat together is not only for us to retreat, but also for us to advance together. We're a group now. If the others don't want to suffer like the Dragon Emperor this time, not only should they agree to this action, but they should also provide help to deal with Moto together. Don't forget how the tragedy of the Pinnacles came about. Unity is very important. The association should make a serious statement to Moto and strike back. Only then will the entire universe know that the Beyond Grade A class is no longer the same. We're united. Although they felt that something was not right, many people could not deny that Black Star's words had struck a chord in their hearts. It did sound very reasonable. Of course, our association has to have freedom. I won't force anyone to deal with Moto together, but I'll definitely help Ames myself, because I always remember how I got rich. Now let me ask you the question again. Han Shao stared at the crowd and enunciated each word clearly. Who agrees? Who opposes? After 2 seconds of silence, Baoni raised his hand and broke the silence. I agree. Me too. Kohler was not to be outdone. With someone taking the lead, the people of the Red Empire, other than Heber, all voted. Some of the neutral beyond grade, as in the association, who sided with Black Star also expressed their agreement, and the crowd responded. Ames rested her chin on her hand as she watched this scene. Her curved eyes were full of smiles. She loved to see Han Shao talking so calmly in front of everyone. The people of the Mecha Empire looked at Manison. Seeing that Manison was silent, they did not object. Seeing this, Kasuyi and the other directors also voted. Black Star is right. We can't do anything about the personal grudge between him and the Moto civilization. However, we have to follow the rules of war even when we're fighting. We can't use methods that are too sinister without limit. Moto has already crossed the line by plotting against the family of another beyond grade A who is not involved in this matter, the old dragon said. That's right, that's right. I especially agree with what Black Star said about the true meaning of a united front. If the Mecha Empire kidnaps me one day, you guys have to come and save me, Sun Hunter joked. Manison glanced at him coldly. Don't worry, you're too young. I'm not interested. At this time, a neutral beyond grade A who had been lurking suddenly said, Black Star said that he wants to deal with Moto, but the Mecha Empire is also an accomplice. Why don't you take revenge on him? I think you should treat everyone equally. Hearing this, the room fell silent again. Many people's expressions became strange. He's definitely fanning the flames. Good kid, you've got guts. Han Shao glanced at him and was amused. Yo, I remember that this guy was one of the mercenaries of the Supercluster Alliance in my previous life. Maybe he's actually a direct descendant of a certain supercluster civilization, just like Traveler, trying to shift the hatred and confuse everyone here? Could this guy be a secret direct descendant of Moto? This thought flashed through his mind. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Han Shao waved his hands magnanimously and sighed on purpose. One of the purposes of our association is to mediate conflicts between beyond grade as. Although Manison is heartless, I can't be unjust. I'll just take it as me taking a loss and won't pursue it. As soon as he said that, Manison's body trembled. His mentality that he had finally calmed down in the past few days almost exploded again. Can you even speak human language? You took away the soul swapper and stole 2 of my felons. You call that a loss? Then, I want to take a loss like that too, and I want to take it every day. Seeing Manison's twitching face, many people hurriedly raised their hands to stroke their beards to hide the crazy smile on their faces. Manison closed his eyes, took a few seconds to suppress his anger, and said with an expressionless face, Black Star, even if you took my sample, you won't be able to learn my technology. He had this confidence. Be it the felon technology or the indestructible mechanical troops technology, he had mixed his original methods in them. This was the essence he had mastered after secretly innovating the virtual technology. Without the prior knowledge of the virtual technology innovation, he was sure that even if Black Star had some results, he would at most obtain something that was neither right nor wrong. It would be impossible for him to restore all the details of the 2 technologies. Don't worry, I won't stop you from comforting yourself. Han Shao chuckled. Humph, stubborn. If I'm not wrong, your research has reached a bottleneck since the beginning, right? Han Shao hesitated for a moment and did not reply. Seeing this, Manison's lips curled up slightly. Feeling that he had guessed correctly, his mood finally improved a little. He slowly said, I guessed correctly, so you don't dare to answer? Han Shao shook his head and said hesitantly, I think you have a long life ahead of you. I just feel that you're old and don't have many years left to live. I'm afraid that if I tell you the truth, you'll have a heart attack and die on the spot. If that's the case, the credit for killing you won't be given to me. Wouldn't that be a waste? F***ck off. P.S. I recommend a novel called I Am the Creator of Mythology by Xine. The main character is very unrestrained, the newly popular Hua school. The whole process is very cool. If you are interested, go and take a look. Chapter 1184. The day after the meeting, the Beyond Grade A Association released a statement under the influence of Han Shao. The statement stated that the Moto civilization had plotted against other Beyond Grade as in friends in order to frame Black Star, which violated the rules of the association. In order to protect the interests of the members, the association strongly condemned Moto's actions and approved of Black Star's counterattack. Furthermore, the association did not deny the possibility of personally intervening to protect the interests of the members. As soon as the announcement was released, it caused a strong reaction in the flickering world. The ones with the biggest reaction were the various organizations on the front lines of the flickering war. Ever since the start of the war, most of the Beyond Grade had been observing the situation and not intervening. Now, was this a sign that they were going to personally take action? Although the association claimed that they were going to deal with the Moto civilization, the armed forces on the side of the three universal civilizations were not happy. Everyone knew that the Beyond Grade were the weapons of the ultimate soldiers. Plus, the intensity of the war was controlled. Once the Beyond Grade intervened, they would definitely become the main force in the war. The others would not even be able to get anything. The angriest of all was the Supercluster Alliance. If not for the fact that they were all allies, they would have even turned around and attacked the Moto civilization. The Supercluster Alliance only wanted Moto to resist the invasion of the Black Star Core and not do anything unnecessary. However, because of their different standpoints, Moto had to plan for themselves. Now, they had directly poked the hornet's nest and became the biggest unexpected factor in the war. Unlike in the past, the Beyond Grade had established a collective association, turning from a sheet of loose sand into a barely organized group. Once provoked, they would form a nest, and their influence would be extraordinary. If not for the fact that the association was in a conflict of interests with the three universal civilizations, giving the Supercluster Alliance an advantage, they would not have dared to say that they had no chance of winning this war. It did not make sense to say that Aesop was not involved. He had helped the Black Star Corps find the secret transportation routes of the Moto civilization. However, this part was deliberately left out by the association, only emphasizing his relationship with the Dragon Emperor and the fact that the Dragon Emperor did not participate in this matter. From a reasonable point of view, the Moto civilization had not gone overboard. It was clearly Aesop who helped Black Star deal with them first. However, using this to reason with the association would only bring shame to themselves. The reason for this was Black Star's power. In order to restrain a power, the only way was to use greater power. It was just like using the right medicine to treat the illness. Reasoning was useless in itself. It was equivalent to using the wrong medicine. The current Supercluster Alliance naturally did not have the power to suppress the Beyond Grade A Association. In the entire universe, only the three universal civilizations had the power to do so. However, this matter was beneficial to them, so of course, they would not stand out to undermine the Beyond Grade A Association. Thus, they all remained silent and agreed. The situation seemed to be developing in a direction that was beneficial to the three universal civilizations. However, while the upper echelons of the three universal civilizations were happy, their feelings were somewhat complicated. Black Star is gaining more and more power. On the mother planet of the Radiant Federation, President Bader looked at the report and let out a long sigh. The direct Beyond Grade A Supers had already handed the details of the meeting to him. Although the person involved was Ames, with this woman's personality, she would not ask for help from outsiders. The change in the association's attitude this time was completely driven by Black Star. The moment the Black Star Corps made the announcement, Black Star had influenced the association to react, using his identity and position to complete the mobilization of resources that were beneficial to his actions. Most of the time, the specific form of power was the ability to mobilize others. A person who could make many people act according to his wishes was considered a person with power and influence. The advanced civilizations had done this many times. As long as it was a good method, it did not matter if it was black or white. Before the establishment of the Beyond Grade A Association, if Black Star wanted to borrow power, the only method he could use was to complain to the Red Empire. Now, he had promoted the establishment of the Beyond Grade A Association, creating a new backing and a new source of power for himself. He had more resources and platforms in his hands than before, and his position in the Galactic Society was getting higher and higher. In contrast, although Manison was the president of a higher level, Han Shao had gradually taken away a lot of his speaking rights. This was partly due to the three universal civilizations adding fuel to the fire, but the Mecha Empire was still an ally of the Radiant Federation in name after all, so Bader was somewhat unhappy. What made him feel the most conflicted was the unity shown by the association this time. The way Bader saw it, these Beyond Grade as were not speaking to the entire universe but telling the three universal civilizations that they were no longer a sheet of loose sand. This was an indirect demonstration. Although some Beyond Grade as still had different thoughts, they had a common goal. If they were left alone, it could be foreseen that the control of the three universal civilizations over the Beyond Grade A group would gradually weaken over time. Sigh. Bader rubbed his temples and felt a headache coming on. As the leader of an advanced civilization, there were too many layers to consider when it came to a single matter. Even though there were specialized medical personnel to take care of his body and keep him full of energy, his long career as a leader had exhausted too much of his mental and physical strength, causing damage to his mental state. However, the day of the leadership change was not far away, and his term was almost over. Not only the Radiance, but Uranril on the Red Empire's side was also about to step down. These problems could only be left to the future generations to worry about. Free Competition Zone, Emerald Star Cluster, Ferdinand Battle Zone. On this day, countless battleships of the Black Star Army gathered around a temporary space base. Almost 70 to 80% of the fleets that the Black Star Army had sent to the front lines were gathered here. There were countless normal army warriors and players. Such a gathering was usually for large-scale military operations, but today it was just to welcome a few people. In one of the battleships, many players squeezed in front of the porthole and stared at the temporary blue Stargate next to the base. The notice said that Black Star will be here today. Why isn't he here yet? Is there a traffic jam in the Stargate? Everyone discussed softly. They were supposed to be fighting on the front lines and continue to fight with the enemy guild alliance, but not long ago, Philip gave a new order to most of the members to retreat and wait for Black Star's arrival in the base. The players' attention was mainly on the nation war. Recently, the conflict between Black Star and the Mecha Empire was also discussed on the forums, but it was not as popular as their own nation war for the time being. The reaction of the army players after knowing about this was almost the same. They basically shouted "Army Commander is awesome," and continued to chase after the enemy guild players. Regarding the news that Black Star was going to take action personally, some of the new foreign players were pleasantly surprised and looked forward to fighting alongside Han Shao. However, the more experienced Chinese players felt extremely desperate, and their thoughts were shockingly similar. "Don't King come, we don't want to watch CG again." At this time, a black conical ship protruded out of the blue vortex of the Stargate, followed by a black armored hull. A huge main ship sailed out of the Stargate, followed by a fleet of battleships. The scene seemed to be filtered out of the Stargate. In the command room at the front of the main ship, the viewing window switched to two-way transparency. The players present could clearly see Han, Xiao and Ames standing in front of the porthole of the main ship. They're out! Black Star. Dragon Emperor. Ah! Seeing the long-legged big sister with my own eyes, I have no regrets in my life. Don't stop me, I'm going to lick her until she explodes today. Sigh, after watching the main character of Black Star's movie, Fu Ding, and seeing him in person, it turns out that this is called the distance between imagination and reality. Just the thought of Black Star being able to arrange his legs in any position, my heart breaks. Woo-woo, they're a perfect match. Who are you to object? Many people had not seen Han Xiao for a long time and were very excited. However, in terms of popularity, Ames completely crushed him. The players' cries and screams came from all the spaceship. In the command room of the main ship, Ames looked at the fleet outside the window and asked, "Are these enough people?" "With the two of us, of course it's enough." Han Xiao nodded. After making the announcement, the two of them rushed to the front line to fulfill their promise, deciding to attack the Moto civilization personally. At this time, a remote projection appeared beside the two of them. It was the Commander-in-Chief of the frontline fleet, Herluz. "Sirs, the troops have been assembled according to the instructions. What should we do next?" Han Xiao narrowed his eyes, curled his lips and said, "Of course, we'll give the Moto civilization a gift first." Hearing this, a gleam flashed across Ames' eyes and she was eager to try. This was the plan they had discussed on the way here. From the captives, they learned that the plan to ambush Aesop was first thought of by the commanders of the Moto Expeditionary Army. Therefore, the two of them made a decision: as soon as they arrived at the front line, they would go straight to the root of the problem and kill the culprit first. However, before we have fun with Moto, let's get rid of the people who are in the way first. Han Zhao's tone changed. In the Ferdinand Theater, have you found out all the organizations that followed behind the Black Star Corps? Yes. Herluz nodded. The Black Star Corps' target had always been the Moto civilization. Some of the affiliated organizations of the three universal civilizations took the opportunity when the Black Star Corps broke through the front line to attack from behind, constantly encroaching on Moto's territory, wanting to use this place as a breakthrough point in the war. Okay, contact all the commanders of these troops and pull them into the communication channel. Then, Han Xiao closed his eyes and waited for a while. In less than 10 minutes, the commanders of these organizations entered the channel one after another. It was way too easy to contact them. Hearing that it was Black Star looking for them, none of them rejected and accepted the communication request obediently. In the channel, voices appeared one after another. Not long after, everyone was there. It was noisy. Han Xiao then opened his eyes and said, "Hello, everyone. I'm Black Star." "Greetings, Your Excellency Black Star." "Hello, Mr. Black Star. Have you eaten?" The channel went silent for a moment. Everyone hurriedly greeted him. Just from their tone, one could imagine the fear on their faces. Han Xiao nodded and went straight to the point. "Everyone, please give me some face and leave the Ferdinand Theater. Don't waste your time here." Everyone was stunned and at a loss for words. They didn't know how to respond. The channel became silent. Some people were dissatisfied. They thought that Black Star wanted to take all the benefits for himself and wanted them to leave with just one sentence. Your Excellency Black Star, that doesn't seem very appropriate. Plus, we can help. With us helping you deal with the small fries that escaped, your losses will be reduced. Plus, we'll be moving around the periphery, eliminating the possibility of the Moto civilization or other enemies surrounding the Black Star Corps, someone argued. Yes. We all know that you're eager for revenge, but with our help, you can get rid of the Moto civilization expeditionary army faster. There's strength in numbers. Many people immediately agreed. Of course, I'm just afraid that you guys will beat Moto and give up too quickly. I can only torture them to my heart's content if they don't surrender. I don't want to emphasize it a second time. In short, I hope that everyone will leave the Ferdinand Theater within 5 days. Han Xiao said slowly with a low tone. I'll take over this battlefront. Chapter 1185. Han Xiao thought that he was a person who convinced people with material logic. Under his explanation, threat, these armed organizations that were following behind to drink the leftovers willingly and helplessly retreated from the battle zone and changed their target. A few days later, the Black Star Corps was the only attacking force left in the Moto civilization's defense line in the Ferdinand battle zone. Black Star did not hide his arrival at the front line. The Moto Expeditionary Army had already received the news and was on high alert. Although the comrades of the Black Star Corps had all retreated, Black Star's arrival raised the Moto Expeditionary Army's alertness to a higher level than before. Black Star alone was equivalent to thousands of soldiers. 2 days later, the Moto Expeditionary Army noticed the movements of the Black Star Corps. The other party temporarily recalled the troops that were attacking the other lines of defense, gathered in a large scale, and marched toward one of the lines of defense as if they were about to launch an all-out attack. The leader was Black Star himself. The Moto Expeditionary Army immediately responded, mobilizing a large number of troops to reinforce this part of the line of defense. The enormous fleet crossed the galaxy, dragging dense streams of light behind it. After sailing for a while, the line of defense set up by the Moto Expeditionary Army appeared in front of them. It was like a long dragon made of battleships, armed fortresses, and large mechanical suits, extending all the way to the horizon. 5 celestial bodies were transported over, forming a defensive formation around each other. The 2 enormous armies were facing each other across the boundless galaxy, and the 2 armies were facing each other. In the command room of the Black Star Corps' flagship, Ames observed the battlefield view, shook her head, and said, "They don't have any beyond grade as, and they still want to fight head-on. Is Moto planning to sacrifice their entire fleet? They don't have a choice. If they don't use this stupid method, they can only sit back and watch us invade." Han Xiao smiled. The only beyond grade as who were personally involved in the battle were himself and Ames. Although Moto had beyond grade as, they were not willing to expose their identities, and they were restricted by the association, so it was difficult for them to find an excuse to join in. Moto could not make bricks without straw. If they wanted to stop the 2 beyond grade as, they could only fight them head-on with their fleet. In a battlefield of this level, the existence of beyond grade as was of strategic importance. If there were no beyond grade as to contend against each other, they could only fill in the gaps with fleet. Even if they could stop the beyond grade as for now, it would be difficult to kill them. No matter how high the production rate was, the speed at which the soldiers were regenerating could not be compared to the speed at which a beyond grade A recovered their energy. After repeating this a few times, they would suffer heavy losses. This was a bottomless pit, so all the advanced civilizations wanted to fight for a beyond grade A super. In high-intensity battlefields, the importance of beyond grade as would decrease. However, not all wars would require the use of strategic weapons of mass destruction. In the normal intensity flickering war, beyond grade as were more than enough to lead to victory. At this moment, the fleet commander Haluz said, "Army Commander, the troops have arrived at the target location. Please give us the next step." Han Xiao waved his hand. "There's no need to stare at them. Just fight." The order was passed down layer by layer and quickly spread to the entire army. The next moment, the Black Star Corps launched an attack. It was as if billions of stars suddenly lit up in the dark universe, all of which were the light of psionic cannons. The light beams that were so bright that they were almost pale poured down like a storm, hitting the protective shield of the Moto civilization's base and the shields of the spaceships, creating large amounts of electric arcs like splashing water. The combined shield of the Moto Expeditionary Army's fleets flashed. The energy reserves of the shields of many spaceships in the formation suddenly dropped below the warning line, and they started to sound alarms. The Moto Expeditionary Army immediately counterattacked. The assault fleets, and battleships of both sides were activated, charging toward each other and tearing at each other. A horrifying battlefield was formed in no time. The two sides were enemies with no room for compromise. There was no room for words. They fought as soon as they saw each other. The war broke out immediately. Ames glanced back. Seeing Han Shao nod, she strode out of the hatch, turned into a meteor, and charged into the battlefield herself. The majestic force field condensed into countless dragon pythons, rolling in the enemy's fleet. Pulling, tearing, vibrating, and other forces worked at the same time. The enemy spaceships were shattered into balls of twisted metal by her force field, and their formation was messed up. Her Esper ability was known for being all-round. She was good at large area AoE attacks, which was very practical in a galactic battlefield. Han Shao did not stay idle. He snapped his fingers, and groups of mechanical soldiers walked out of the secondary dimensional army box and entered the battlefield. The large-scale mechanical army instantly gave the enemy an overwhelming advantage. A 10-man team of soldiers could easily tear apart a Moto heavy battleship. Meanwhile, there were at least 3 million mechanical soldiers on the battlefield, and the number was still increasing. The mechanical deity was powerful in a one-on-one battle, but the Mech Legion was still more efficient when dealing with large-scale enemies. As a peak beyond Grade A and a mechanic who specialized in warfare, taking action personally on a battlefield of this level was like crushing noob. Normally, Han Shao might have saved some energy, but he had no intention of going easy on Moto. The two sides fought fiercely. The troops of the Moto faction were extremely passive and suffered heavy losses. Their troops were vaporized one after another. Every now and then, there would be agent organizations trying to escape from the battlefield, but most of them were targeted by the wandering mechanical army and blown into pieces. On the battlefield, the Galactic Business Alliance, Northern Battlefront, 5C Alliance, Plateau Eagle, and the other guild alliances that were on the supercluster side were hiding everywhere. They did not have any confidence like before and only wanted to survive. Luckily, we didn't bring all of our forces this time. The leader of the Northern Battlefront, Fire of North Sea, had a face full of fear. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have ignored the transfer order. The leader of Plateau Eagle had a troubled expression. Now is not the time to celebrate. The Moto Expeditionary Army won't be able to hold this line of defense. Let's think about how to protect the troops we have. Although it's not a lot, it still hurts my heart, the president of the Galactic Business Alliance said helplessly. Due to the attack of the Black Star Corps, the national war between the players was currently mainly concentrated in the Ferdinand battlefront. The player alliances of the supercluster side were temporarily under the command of the Moto civilization. When they learned that the Black Star Corps was about to launch an all-out attack, these important immortal allies also received the transfer order from Moto to guard this line of defense together. These guild alliances were not stupid. They knew that Black Star was coming from the forums, so they were careful and only brought a small number of troops to participate in the battle. Reality proved that this choice was wise. The other side had 2 beyond grade As, and Moto had none. Their chances of winning were less than 1%. If these guild alliances had brought all of their assets over, they would all be dead by now. Although the main focus of the national war was the players, fleets and equipment were equally important. The guild alliances of the supercluster side had accumulated a lot of capital, but if they all died, they would not be able to fight the national war anymore. They would definitely be trampled on by the players of the Black Star Corps. Speaking of which, these guild alliances also felt very helpless. Our national war was going well, but the Black Star Corps let their boss out again. Isn't this bullying? If Black Star likes to fight in person so much, how are we going to fight against the army players? This feeling was like two children fighting, but the adults in the other party's family joined in. Unreasonable. During this period of time, the guild alliances had been fighting in the free competition zone, and none of the NPC organizations they met were not afraid of them, the cancer of the universe. However, the guild alliances also knew that in front of a super boss like Black Star, they, the cancer of the universe, were also a weak group. They would not be able to survive even if they revived a few times. With the help of two beyond grade the battle became one-sided. Very soon, a gap was created in the defense line. The reinforcements could not even arrive in time, and the Moto garrison in this defense line showed signs of retreating. Han Xiao observed the situation, looked at the gap created in the defense line, and said, "It's about time. We can go in now." As he spoke, he looked back at Haluz. "I'll leave a lord's avatar to guard the fleet and some mechanical troops for you. Take the army and don't attack the center of Moto. Continue to attack the various outer defense lines and focus on killing the enemy's forces." Understood. Haluz nodded with a serious expression. After many years of leading troops, he was still quite dignified when he was not addicted to playing cards. He said, "You and Her Excellency Dragon Emperor are going to attack the Moto Expeditionary Army's base alone. You must be careful." "It's not me who should be careful, it's them." Han Xiao smiled, flew out of the battleship, and pulled Ames, who had been fighting the entire time. Surrounded by the mechanical army, they quickly passed through the dense artillery fire and crossed the battlefield. The Moto Expeditionary Army was defeated again and again, unable to organize an effective interception. The battleships in front of them were destroyed by the mechanical army one after another. The two of them charged into the defense line and left, disappearing in the direction of the center of Moto. The plan that the two of them had discussed was mainly carried out by the two of them, while the rest of the troops stayed at the outer defense line to attack and restrain the enemy. This was because the Moto Expeditionary Army would definitely set up an encirclement after they entered the center of Moto, and beyond grade as were smaller targets and more agile. What? They've charged in alone? In the Moto Expeditionary Army's base camp, the Supreme Commander Roddick's expression changed when he heard the frontline report. He had thought that Black Star would lead the army and charge in with great fanfare, but Han Xiao and Haluz went in alone, which surprised him. What's Black Star trying to do? Why did he leave his troops outside? From the looks of it, he doesn't seem like he's trying to take our territory. Someone was confused. He's here to kill. His target is us. Lagos knew what was going on. He sighed and said, "We were the ones who came up with the plan to target Aesop. Black Star probably already knows about it from other sources, so we're all targeted by him." Hearing this, everyone present could not help but panic. However, at the same time, they felt strangely flattered. They did not expect that they would one day become the target of a peak beyond Grade A's assassination mission. Could we be wrong? Maybe Black Star has other targets? Someone could not believe it. Don't lie to yourself. He's coming for us. Roddick yelled angrily. Then let's move away from the command center and seek refuge somewhere else. Someone hurriedly said. It's useless. Black Star is a virtual mechanic. We can't hide from him anywhere. Roddick's face was pale as he paced back and forth. He did not regret executing Lagos' plan to target Aesop. He only regretted that it did not succeed. Now, the price of failure had arrived. This was karma. Let's ask the upper echelons for help. Since Black Star is so arrogant, we might be able to kill Black Star if the Beyond Grade as cooperate with our expeditionary army, someone carefully suggested. Hearing this, Roddick and Lagos looked at each other and saw the sadness in each other's eyes. As the upper echelons of the expeditionary army, the two of them naturally knew what choice the Moto civilization would make in this situation. Black Star had already killed his way into the hinterland. Plus, Moto would not expose their beyond grade as in risk coming here to save people. In other words, even if the Moto upper echelons knew about Black Star's current goal, they would not be able to help much. They had already been abandoned. In fact, when Black Star announced that he would personally join the battle, Roddick already knew that the situation was hopeless. He had asked the Moto upper echelons for help more than once, hoping to send beyond grade as over to defend. However, the Moto upper echelons never said anything. Instead, they only asked them to hold on and only provide resources and ordinary fleets. How could this level of support stop Black Star? This is like giving me a budget of 100 anas but asking me to achieve the effect of 10,000 anas. I can't do it. What are the upper echelons hesitating for? Is there a need to hide the identity of a direct beyond grade A? If not now, when? Roddick roared in his mind, but no matter what he thought, he could not make the decision for the upper echelons. There's only one way left, which is to ask for help from the Supercluster Alliance, Lagos said with a deep voice. Roddick nodded with a dark expression. He took out his communicator, entered the communication channel of the upper echelons of the Supercluster Alliance Expeditionary Army, and spoke. Guys, I need help. Black Star is attacking. He explained the situation, and the channel was silent for a while. Then, another Expeditionary Army commander from the Supercluster civilization asked with a deep voice, What do we do? What do you want us to do? We can't stop Black Star. I hope you can send reinforcements to help us defeat Black Star. We also hope to temporarily move the command center to one of your territories. That way, Black Star won't be able to carry out the decapitation operation. Impossible! Another commander said angrily. This is something you Moto started. Solve it yourselves. Roddick's face darkened. We agreed to advance and retreat together. Are you going to go back on the agreement just like that? The Covenant says that we should deal with the conflicts of the three universal civilizations together. Not all of us should pay for your own debts, someone yelled angrily. To be honest, I've tolerated Moto for a long time. The Supercluster civilization formed the alliance to snatch development territory from the three universal civilizations. They had already suppressed a lot of their selfishness, and would not continue to fight among themselves at this time. However, when it came to the overall strategy, the other supercluster civilizations had no reason to negotiate. If there was no Beyond Grade A association, and Black Star was representing the three universal civilizations, they would have provided assistance without hesitation. However, the Beyond Grade As had already formed the association and expressed that they would stay out of this, causing the advantage of the three universal civilizations' high-level combatants to disappear. This was supposed to be a good thing, but Moto had provoked Black Star. If the others got involved, who knew what the Beyond Grade A Association's attitude would be? Would Black Star turn around and mess with them? They could not even take care of themselves now. No one wanted to be dragged down by Moto's mess. Therefore, the other supercluster civilizations did not want to help Moto deal with Black Star at all. Otherwise, their overall strategy would be greatly affected. Instead of that, they might as well sacrifice their teammates to the heavens. Roddick hung up the communicator with a sour expression. Everyone present heard the conversation just now. The room was shrouded in a gloomy fog. Looks like we can only rely on ourselves, Lagos said, but he smiled bitterly in his heart. He knew that there was no hope unless a miracle happened. Thinking of how high-spirited he was when he took office and compared it to how desperate he was now, Lagos had mixed feelings. If not for the Moto civilization's scheme against the Kundi race, they would not have been forced to accept such a mess. Moto could have been like the other supercluster civilizations and not fallen into such a predicament. Although Lagos did not like to push the blame, at this moment, he could not help but hate the guy who suggested to the upper echelons to plot against the Kundi race. What a King scammer. Chapter 1186. As soon as Han Shao and Ames entered the Moto Expeditionary Army's territory, it was like adding water to a pot of oil. The Moto troops stationed in the middle ring and core of the Emerald immediately started moving, searching for the two of them everywhere. Some of the fleets at the front line were also called back to help with the operation. If it really had the defensive strength of a supercluster civilization's headquarters, any beyond Grade A who snuck in would have a hard time. However, this was the flickering world, after all. Of course, the Moto Expeditionary Army's control of the territory was far from the level of their hometown. Many planets had not even completed their infrastructure. Not only Moto, but all the members of the Supercluster Alliance also had limited control over their territories in the free competition zone. The Expeditionary Army's military strength was not that high to begin with, and it had only been a few years since the fourth development phase. They had spent most of their time exploring, so there was not much room for operation. Furthermore, it was wartime now, so their territories were more or less defenseless. Therefore, due to all kinds of factors, Han Shao and Ames were free and easy in the Moto Expeditionary Army's territory. They could go wherever they wanted, and the Moto fleet that was chasing after them could only eat their dust. A belt of meteorites drifted slowly in the universe like a black ribbon. On one of the meteorites sat two figures, Han Shao and Ames. The location of the tracking still hasn't changed. The leaders of the Moto Expeditionary Army are still in the command center. TSK, if it were a lower-level civilization, they might have run around, hoping for a fluke. Dense streams of data flashed past Han Zhao's eyes. He retracted the data probes that had infiltrated the Moto Expeditionary Army's network, and his eyes turned back to black. Ames played with two pieces of high-density metal that she had dug out from the meteorites casually, raised her brows and said, "We've been here for more than half a month. The Moto people all know that we're here, but they didn't even run. They've been staying in the command center all this time. Are they waiting for us? Perhaps they know that it's useless to run and have resigned themselves to their fate. Only advanced civilizations are so knowledgeable." Han Shao shrugged and did not take this to heart. As he spoke, he opened the secondary dimensional army box and released batches of mechanical soldiers. With a slight nod, these mechanical soldiers turned into streams of light and left in different directions. Ames watched this from the side and said helplessly, "Black Star, we could have gone straight to the Moto Expeditionary Army's headquarters and saved a lot of time. You're the one who insisted on taking a detour. Otherwise, we would have taken care of the target long ago." Han Shao sighed and pretended to get up. "So you don't want me to spend more time with you? Well, let's go and get it done quickly. Who said so? Sit down." Ames rolled her eyes and said nonchalantly, "You said you were going to plant a large number of sentries in the Moto Expeditionary Army's territory. We're already halfway through the plan. How can we give up halfway?" Black Star was a busy man. The next time he went to the secondary dimension would be at least a decade later. However, now that he was taking time out of his busy schedule to accompany her, she naturally did not want it to end so early. Han Shao smiled to himself and sat down firmly again. Other than carrying out the decapitation operation, he had another important goal in entering the Moto Expeditionary Army's territory, which was to plant sentries in Moto's territory. Otherwise, he would not have taken a detour for more than half a month after charging into the enemy's territory. During this time, he had already sent out who knew how many batches of mechanical troops to hide in the Moto Expeditionary Army's territory. These mechanical troops could all be controlled remotely. First, it was to deal damage to Moto. Second, it was to confuse the public and distract the Moto fleet. Third, it was to gather intelligence and monitor their movements, trying to find the destination of the Moto civilization's various secret transportation routes and leave behind a throne node so that he could infiltrate the Moto civilization anytime in the future. If he left these mechanical soldiers behind, the Modo civilization would definitely know. They would have no choice but to send out a lot of manpower to search for Han Zhao's mechanical troops in their territory. On the other hand, Han Xiao purposely took a detour and had other intentions. I purposely gave Modo so much time to prepare. I wonder if there are any beyond grade as coming to protect the command center. Han Xiao scratched his chin. Without the protection of a beyond grade A, it would be very easy to kill the commander, and Han Xiao wanted to lure the snake out of its hole. He purposely walked so slowly to give the Modo upper echelons more time to consider, and also to put pressure on them. After all, he was planting sentries in their territory, and the longer he stayed, the more humiliated Modo would be. If the Modo upper echelons could not help but send beyond grade as bodyguards, he would have a chance to cause more damage to Modo, which would really hurt Modo. This was his biggest goal for this trip. It looked like he was only targeting the commander of the Modo Expeditionary Army, but he was actually fighting with the upper echelons of the Modo civilization. With that in mind, he opened the forums and took a look. At this time, Herluz was still attacking the outer defense line of the Modo Expeditionary Army with his troops. However, they only attacked and did not enter. Even if they broke through the enemy's formation, they would not cross the defense line. Instead, they would go back and rest for a while before continuing to attack the next location. If those armed organizations were still in the Ferdinand battle zone, they would definitely not let go of this opportunity and keep pushing forward. This was why the outer defense line of the Modo Expeditionary Army kept shrinking. However, now that those armed organizations were all chased away by Han Xiao, no one took advantage of the opening to attack the city. Therefore, Modo had time to mobilize troops to fill up the gap, but it made them feel even worse. The actions of the Black Star Corps drove the commanders of the Modo Expeditionary Army to the brink of insanity. They kept rubbing on the outside but refused to enter. This was torture. Furthermore, they had their duty, so they did not allow themselves to be attacked. They had to put up a futile resistance time and time again. On the other side, without Han Xiao at the front line, the Guild Alliance of the Supercluster faction felt that they could do it again. They continued to fight the national war with the army players and had a lot of fun. It was obviously a fight, but both sides were enjoying it. One was glad that the big boss was gone, and the other was glad that they did not have to watch the cinematics anymore. On the other side of the flickering world, on a planet occupied by a beyond grade A tall silhouette was pacing back and forth in the palace with a communicator in his hand. He looked rather anxious, as if he was waiting for someone to call. Beep beep. The communicator rang. This tall silhouette picked it up immediately. How's my application? Has it been approved? In the secret channel, an emissary whose face could not be seen said sternly, "No, the upper echelons don't allow you to reinforce the Modo Expeditionary Army. Don't act on your own. Black Star has been wandering around in Modo's territory for almost a month. We have so much time to prepare, but we still haven't sent any beyond grade as to reinforce him. This doesn't make sense. What will the other organizations think of Modo? Will our comrades in the Expeditionary Army be disappointed?" The tall silhouette was enraged. If Han Xiao was here, he would recognize that this was the kid who started the fire at the Beyond Grade A Association meeting. He was a secret direct member of the Modo civilization. However, although he was a direct member, he did have his own temper and was quite courageous. Otherwise, he would not have dared to speak up when facing Black Star and the Mecha Empire, two pinnacle Beyond Grade As. Black Star had announced that he would personally join the battle. Almost all the organizations in the flickering world were watching his actions. They all knew that he had been in the Modo Expeditionary Army's territory for almost a month. If Modo did not do anything under such circumstances and let Black Star do whatever he wanted in his stomach, it would be a disgrace to the entire civilization. This beyond grade A could not help but be angry. What's the point of going? Can you beat Black Star? You're just going to die. Let's not talk about you. Even if all the hidden beyond grade As of Moto attack together, they won't be Black Star's match. Stay rational, the emissary said angrily. Every beyond grade A is hard to come by. We can't expose ourselves here. A moment of forbearance is just for the future eruption. The tall silhouette was unwilling, but he had to admit that Black Star was terrifyingly strong. He would only be delivering food if he went. If he sent a beyond grade A, Black Star would eat him. If he did not send a beyond grade A, the reputation and image of the Moto civilization would be damaged. Not only would it be embarrassing, but it would also make people think that they were heartless. The expeditionary army's morale would definitely plummet. Just purposely walking a little slower could achieve such an effect. This was Black Star's scheme. Thinking of how Black Star spoke so confidently during the meeting, this beyond grade A felt both resentment and fear. What kind of sin did Moto commit to have such an opponent? Time passed slowly. Another half a month passed in the blink of an eye. No matter how slow Han Shao and Ames were along the way, they finally arrived at their destination. The densely packed Moto fleet spread out in front of them, surrounding the command center of the Moto Expeditionary Army. The crew members in the fleet all tensed up with solemn expressions. Although they had the advantage in numbers, they were the ones who were nervous. These two asterisks holes, they're finally here. In the command center, Roddick clenched his teeth. His eyes were bloodshot and his hair was messy. He looked extremely haggard, but his face was burning with fury. You're finally here. Lagos, who was beside him, was not in a much better state, but he had a relieved expression on his face. The two of them knew that Black Star and Dragon Emperor were coming for them, but they were walking too slowly. The two of them went from nervousness to despair at the beginning to anxiety, and in the end, they were about to go crazy from waiting. Black Star and Dragon Emperor were like two knives chopping at their heads, making them feel like years. This feeling of watching the guillotine slowly chopping at their heads gave the two of them a mountainous pressure. It was a form of psychological torture. Originally, Roddick and Lagos did not want the enemy to come, but later they were so anxious that their thoughts changed from better slow down to why aren't they King here yet? Why are they still not here yet? They wished they could go on the battlefield and use their whips to urge the enemy to hurry up. Plus, the Moto civilization had not sent any beyond grade A reinforcements for 1.5 months, so Roddick and Lagos were even more certain that they were abandoned. They were sad and had already made up their minds to die. They just wanted to cut off their heads as soon as possible. Roddick turned on the wide area channel. His tone was fierce, as if he had decided to throw away all hope for the best. Black Star, aren't you here to kill us? Come on. Hearing the roar in the channel, the many Moto soldiers present did not feel good. They were all involved, so they naturally knew that Moto did not send any strong reinforcements, forcing them, the ordinary supers, to face Black Star, the god of the universe. It would be impossible for them not to feel resentful. However, as soldiers, they had to follow orders even if they knew that the path ahead was extremely dangerous. Han Shao scanned the entire place and opened his senses to the maximum. He could not help but laugh and shake his head. Yoho, Moto is really patient. I've already knocked on their door and given them enough time, but in the end, they still didn't send a single beyond grade A. Are they that scared of me? Ames smiled. How many people in the universe are not scared of you now? Forget it. This also proves that Moto was beaten up enough by me and learned their lesson. Han Shao shook his head. Although he did not manage to lure the enemy out, he did not mind. After all, he could still complete the decapitation and destroy Moto's image. He looked around and finally locked onto one of the locations in the Moto Expeditionary Army base. That was where the command center was, and the target he was going to take care of was there. Han Shao turned around and asked, "So, are you going to kill the target yourself, or do you want me to do it?" In the beginning, Ames wanted to kill Lagos and the others personally, but thinking of what she had experienced with Han Shao in the past few days, she shook her head indifferently. "It's the same whether you do it or I do it. Then let me do it. It's more efficient. You're too slow." Seeing Ames roll her eyes, Han Shao coughed, and the mechanical soldiers behind him all walked forward. He knew that the Moto civilization would definitely set up a large number of space-stabilizing devices near the base, so he summoned a batch of mechanical troops before he arrived, saving him the trouble of setting up a military camp on the spot. Seeing this, the Moto fleet reacted immediately. The crew members suppressed their complicated emotions and hardened their hearts again. They stared at the famous black star in the distance and prepared for battle. Han Shao glanced at them and curled his finger. This batch of mechanical soldiers suddenly paused, and dense white noise and weak space-time distortion appeared on their bodies. The next moment, this batch of mechanical soldiers disappeared into thin air. When they reappeared, they had moved a large distance forward and were in a static state, like a picture that had been frozen. Rumble! Seeing this strange scene, the Moto fleet did not hesitate and opened fire, blowing up this batch of mechanical soldiers. However, something shocking happened. This batch of mechanical soldiers appeared again. Not only did they return to their original state without any damage, but they had also moved a large distance forward, getting closer and closer to the command center. This strange scene shocked the Moto fleet. Using the Kundi race's technology to fight you guys behind the scenes, it's a good idea. Han Shao narrowed his eyes and curled his lips. This frame-skipping mode was the black technology that Han Shao had obtained from the Kundi race, the space-time splicing technology. Furthermore, after so many years of research and improvement, the space-time splicing technology in his hands was no longer the original version. He had improved it too much, and was already quite mature, unlike the original version that could be easily neutralized by various spacetime devices. Now, using the same method to neutralize it was at least 7 to 8 times more difficult in time, which was equivalent to a longer operation time. Although the Red Empire did not allow him to use it in front of outsiders, Han Shao had an idea just now. He instinctively felt that using the Kundi race's trump card to fight Moto seemed to be a good thing for the mission. He trusted his instincts now, so he did just that. Facing this unknown technology, the Moto fleet panicked a little and used all kinds of method. However, no matter how they attacked, they could not stop this batch of mechanical soldiers from moving. Some of the fleets could only turn to attack Han Shao himself, but they were all easily blocked by Han Shao and Ames. Furthermore, some battleships were virtually infiltrated and fell into his control from time to time. How is this possible? Roddick's eyes widened in shock. He stared at the mechanical army that was getting closer and closer with intense despair in his eyes. In order to fight Black Star, he had mobilized a large fleet and thought that he would at least be able to hold them off for a while. However, he did not expect that Black Star would be able to easily break through his fleet's defense line and threaten his life just by casually using an ability that he had never seen before. What kind of technology is this? Lagos was also dumbfounded. Hearing the shocked exclamations of the two in the public channel, Han Shao suddenly smiled and said with a playful tone, "What a cruel joke. To tell you the truth, this is a technology that your Moto civilization missed out on. You were so close to getting it back then. What a pity. The stowaways of the Moto civilization discovered the Kundi race first. If not for the fact that they wanted to harm the Kundi race and scheme against the Red Empire, they would not have missed out on the spacetime splicing technology. Now it was a complete waste. A technology that we missed out on?" Lagos mumbled to himself. His instincts told him that Black Star might be telling the truth. All of a sudden, he had mixed feelings. Finally, under the frenzied siege of the Moto fleet, The mechanical army appeared outside the porthole of the command center in frames skipping without any sign of life. Roddick and Lagos widened their eyes and watched as the energy furnaces on the chests of this mechanical army lit up one after another, flashing with a blinding white light. The next moment, all that was left in their consciousness was a vast expanse of whiteness. Boom! An intense explosion occurred. Blue and white psionic shockwaves spread far into the universe. The command center was completely destroyed. Not even ruins were left. A large piece of the entire base was missing. The shield exploded from the inside out. Roddick, Lagos, and most of the leaders of the Moto Expeditionary Army died in this explosion. Not even a trace of them was left behind. This is just some interest. I hope Moto doesn't give up. We still have plenty of time to play. Looking at the furious Moto fleet, Han Shao chuckled and put his arm around Aim's waist. Then, the King mechanical suit expanded and covered the two of them. Whoosh! A light flashed. Before the Moto fleet surrounded them, the two of them disappeared without a trace. The space stabilizers in this area could not stop the two of them from leaving at all. Chapter 1187. Han Shao only felt his mechanical suit vibrate slightly. When he opened it again, he was already back in the Black Star Corps fleet that was attacking the outer defense line of the Moto Expeditionary Army. He was in the command room of the main ship. Hearing the noise, the officers who were watching the battle all turned around. They first looked at Han Zhao's face, then looked down at his hand on Aim's waist, and then at Aim's calm expression. The room became silent all of a sudden. "What are you looking at? Have you never seen this before?" Han Shao glanced at everyone and retracted his hand. "Boss, the target is taken care of?" Herluz coughed and winked. "Of course. The Moto civilization didn't even send beyond grade as. How could I have failed with just the expeditionary army?" Herluz originally wanted to ask, then why did it take so long? But looking at Aim's glowing face, he hesitated and did not ask. Han Shao ignored him and looked at the battlefield outside the window. It was in the white-hot stage, and the fleets on both sides were fighting fiercely. The army had already broken through the outer protective shields of two planetary bases and sent in a large number of army players. They were fighting the players of the enemy guild alliance on a large scale, and there was no clear winner. This time, Ames turned around, patted Han Zhao's chest, and said, "All right, the mastermind has been killed. I'll return to the Shattered Star Ring first." You're leaving so soon?" Han Shao was stunned. "Didn't you say you were going to deal with the mastermind together?" He had thought that Ames was going to stay there and participate in the battles against Moto to vent her anger. He did not expect her to leave now. "I've already vented my anger by killing the initiator of the plan. Plus, having you here is enough." Ames smiled. She was in an extremely good mood. Her original plan was to help Han Shao while taking revenge. She had already helped a lot. Without her, Manison would have lost at least one felon. Han Shao had convinced her during this time, so Ames decided to listen to Han Zhao's suggestion and return to Floating Dragon Island. Ding! As soon as he said that, Han Zhao's interface reacted. Rage of Ames had turned into mission completed. That's it? Luckily, she's not really going to destroy the entire Moto civilization. She's probably not angry anymore, so she gave up on such an exaggerated idea. Looks like my persuasion during this time was effective, Han Shao thought to himself. I'll take Aesop back. I'll guard him strictly in the future. I won't let him run away easily. Ames played with the hair on her temples. Han Shao mourned for Aesop for a third of a second, and then nodded decisively. Arrange him as you wish. Don't give me any face. Ames stretched out her slender and white fingers and tapped Han Zhao's chest with a smile. Then I'll go back first. Come and find me when you have time. In short, it's all thanks to your help this time. I won't say thank you again. There's no need to be so polite between us. You don't like to hear this anyway. All right. Go back quickly. Han Xiao waved his hand nonchalantly. By the way, before I leave, I have a gift for you. Ames seemed to have suddenly thought of something. The spatial enchantment rune on the back of her hand flashed, and a book appeared in her hand. What's this? Han Xiao looked down curiously. Some time ago, I summarized my energy training experience so far and created a new energy training method. It should be universal. You can practice it too, Ames said with a smile. Han Xiao took the book and flipped through it. It was actually a handwritten version. The content recorded on it was an energy training method called Dragon Emperor Astral Power Absorption Technique. The specific effects were not clear, but it seemed to be quite advanced. It did not lose to Tai Tai's Heber Stellar Furnace training method. Why did you write it by hand? Wouldn't it be more convenient to write it on a smart device and send it to me? This can train my patience. Ames' smile did not change. Her idea was very simple. Only a handwritten version could be used as a gift. It could also be a memento for Black Star. With such a surprise, Han Xiao did not reject it. He put away the handwritten book, nodded, and said, "Okay, I'll find some time to practice it when I go back. Then, I'll be leaving." Ames smiled and did not waste time. She asked Han Xiao to send her back in another king suit. After she disappeared, Han Xiao opened the interface again and took a closer look at the reward. The mission evaluation was excellent, and his basic EXP had increased from 250 million to 10 million. His floating dragon faction contribution points had increased by tens of thousands. Ames' favorability was full to begin with, so it could not increase. However, Aesop's favorability increased by a large amount. The random rewards increased from 2 to 4, and the number of character summon cards doubled. He obtained 2 of them, both of which were Ames' character summon cards. The ability of the first character summon card was called Force Field, Star Setter. It could be used to grab the target using the Esper ability of the force field. It could be considered a decent control ability, and it could be used up to 5 times. The other character summon card's ability was called Battle Whip Dragon Arc. It was also an application technique for the force field ability. It had both Yui damage and crowd control abilities. It also had 5 uses, and the effect was not bad. In Han Xiaoxin's eyes, this ordinary mission was just a bonus, and he did not have high hopes for it. Now that he had obtained these rewards, it could be considered a small gain. The main event in his eyes had always been the Kundi race mission. Opening Kundi race leader's last wish in the mission list, Han Xiao glanced at it. The first requirement was still there, and the second requirement was the same. Because it was a Grade S mission, there was no specific progress shown. However, his intuition told him that his successful surprise attack had made great progress in the mission. After calculating for a while, Han Xiao thought to himself, "That's right. Based on the current situation, the second requirement of this mission will probably be completed when the Moto civilization is completely tortured by me to the point that they give up on competing in the flickering world." He had always been envious of the 3 ability rewards in the second mission requirement. They were the enemy, Proof of Leadership, and Kundi's Wrath. They were all excellent abilities, especially the semi-molding talent, Proof of Leadership with growth potential. With that in mind, Han Xiao summoned Philip in the quantum network vision and said, "Send the spacetime command to the spacetime battleship to the spacetime battleship. Send the recording of me using the spacetime splicing technology to destroy the headquarters of the Moto Expeditionary Army to the Kundi race garrison. Have them play it on a loop in all settlements. Try to let every mantis shrimp cough, every Kundi race member see it." Understood. Han Zhao's battle with the Moto Expeditionary Army was very short, and Philip had recorded the entire process. He was never the type to do things on his own. Since he had helped the Kundi race take revenge, He definitely had to use the recording to increase his reputation in the Kundi race and let the entire race know about his kindness. This would also increase the mission completion rate. After dealing with this matter, Han Shao summoned Fu Ding, walked to the side, and asked softly, "Have you done what I asked you to do? In the past month and a half, I've already converted the souls of 15,420 Moto soldiers and mid-level officers. These are our spies in the Moto Expeditionary Army." Fu Ding nodded. He had received Han Zhao's secret order. When the Black Star Corps fleet attacked the Moto defense line, he used the Soul Swapper to convert some of the enemy soldiers, infiltrate the Moto Expeditionary Army, and plant spies. The Moto civilization had once used the Soul Swapper to deal with the army. Han Shao told Fu Ding to give them a taste of their own medicine. With how strange the Soul Swapper was, even if Moto was prepared, they would not be able to avoid it. Not bad. Han Shao nodded with satisfaction. He had already planted many chess pieces in the Moto Expeditionary Army's territory. This way, he would have more internal intelligence sources. Not only would he be able to control the whereabouts of the Moto civilization's army, but he would also be able to investigate the location of the secret transportation line. He could slowly torture the enemy. "Pass down my order. Retreat temporarily. We'll return to the base and rest for a while," Han Shao said loudly. All the officers present were stunned. "We have the upper hand now. How can we retreat just like that? Even if we don't break into the defense line, we should at least finish this battle first." They did not know that Han Shao was not letting the Black Star Corps rest. Instead, he had just killed the Moto Expeditionary Army's commander. He knew that the enemy would definitely fall into chaos without a leader, so he purposely gave the enemy time to rest. He did not want to give Moto a little bit of hope and then crush it again and again. That way, it would be easier for Moto to give up the competition in despair. Psychological warfare was the most important thing. Although the officers were confused, no one would question the army commander's order. Very soon, the army retracted all their battleships, left the heated battlefield, and retreated in an orderly manner. Seeing this, the Moto garrisons on this line of defense were all confused. "Aren't we at a disadvantage? Why did they stop attacking us halfway? Strange. Hurry and tell the command center." The fleet commander of this defense line quickly reported to the upper echelons. However, what awaited him was a long silence. No one picked up the call. After a while, he received the bad news from the intranet and finally knew what had happened. The entire command center had been killed by Black Star, along with the base. On the other side, on one of the Kundi race's planet. After 20 years of transformation, the new generation of the Kundi race gradually adapted to their captive life and accepted the culture instilled by the Red Empire and the Black Star Corps. As batches of old mantis shrimps died of natural causes, the cultural transformation of the entire race gradually took effect. Every planet was isolated and could not contact other planet. Basic productivity was restored. The streets were bustling, and the heavy atmosphere was much lighter. The younger generation injected new vitality into the Kundi race. On this day, something huge happened on this planet. Every screen in the world was playing a video of Han Shao destroying the Moto Expeditionary Army's command center. Philip even kindly added a video to explain what had happened, trying to make the Kundi race understand what Han Shao had done for them. Every Kundi race member who saw the video understood that Black Star was still carrying out his promise to take revenge for their race. Furthermore, Black Star had even used their technology. Seeing the mechanical soldiers destroying the command center with the space-time splicing technology, the shells of the Kundi race members lit up with an excited orange light. They felt extremely proud. "Look, those people who schemed against us are no match for our Kundi civilization's strongest technology." This made them feel that they were not just watching Black Star uphold justice but helping him. Along with the pride came a deep sense of gratitude toward Black Star. For so many years, not only had he protected them, but he had also kept his promise to seek justice for their race. Such a good person was now the only guardian of their race, which was a blessing in disguise. The same scene played out on every planet of the Kundi race. Countless Kundi race members respected Black Star even more. Chapter 1188. Sai, the Expeditionary Army's commander, was beheaded, but Black Star gave up on attacking. It's obvious that he wants to erode our army again and again. However, the Three Kings won't give up on the competition in the flickering world. What's the point of investing more troops? Not letting the Beyond Grade as participate is just suicide. Black Star has already proven that he has the ability to behead the commander anytime. In a small private meeting room, a few top officials with real power sat on the sofa and complained. Just now, the news of the Expeditionary Army's commander's death came back. The Three Kings of Modo called a meeting with the upper echelons. While they were angry, they quickly promoted a new commander within the Expeditionary Army and asked the military to send more people to support them. The many officials present did not have any objections on the surface, but many of them were more and more against it. Therefore, after the meeting, a few officials with real power who were against it met in private. In the room, Marco was the highest-ranking official. He was the third person in a mainstream political faction within Modo and had a lot of authority. He slowly said, "We can't go on like this. With Black Star as our opponent, Modo has almost no chance in the flickering world. Giving up as soon as possible is the rational choice. If we continue to drag it out, Modo will only be under more and more pressure until it collapses." That's right. These days, the country hasn't been stable either. Many non-official organizations of the three universal civilizations have started so-called peace movements on many colonial planets, using armed demonstrations, organizing strikes, and so on to incite anti-war sentiment in society and force us to retreat. Many industries have been affected. There are also people with ulterior motives spreading the ideology of racial division, attacking the system, and promoting hatred. They can actually reverse our years of harmonious ethnic coexistence education and successfully inculcate discriminatory thoughts in some people. In time, it will definitely give birth to a new rebel army. Some important people from all walks of life have even been assassinated by mysterious forces. There are internal and external threats. Someone sighed and murmured. Marco shook his head. Modo has invested countless resources in the strategic layout of the flickering world decades ago. It makes sense that the Three Kings are unwilling to give up immediately. However, now that the situation has changed, adjusting our strategy is our first choice. Since we can't deal with Black Star's problem, continuing to invest resources in the flickering world is a meaningless waste. We should make up our minds to stop our losses. That's right. The Three Kings' idea is to hold on. If the Superstar Cluster Alliance succeeds, we'll be able to take a bite of the soup. However, if they wanted to hold on until the day the Supercluster Alliance took a turn for the better, the hope was too slim. It's impossible for Black Star to sit by and watch this happen. Don't look at how he's stalling with us right now. If we don't constantly send in reinforcements to feed him, he'll definitely launch an all-out attack and drive us out, another person said. Marco took a sip of the dark amber liquor and said in a low voice, "That's right. Actually, from the very beginning, I didn't think that the Supercluster Alliance would be able to complete the flickering world strategy, and there was an 80% chance that they would fail. We were just fighting with the other supercluster civilizations. In that case, it would be wiser for Modo to escape as soon as possible and get rid of the pressure of the three universal civilizations and the Black Star Core." That's right. Everyone in the room agreed with him. Marco narrowed his eyes. The greater the losses Modo suffers, the more opposition there will be. Maybe we should start preparing for the impeachment process now." Hearing this, the few of them were shocked. They were just complaining here. They did not expect Marco to actually have plans to take action. However, thinking about it from another perspective, this was not a bad idea. Modo was a civilization regime formed by the union of 3 civilizations. The Modo 3 kings each represented a race, but their ideology and political views were cross-racial. Therefore, Modo's political environment was very complicated, and there were also many factions. Due to the uniqueness of the regime, Modo naturally had to have a balance of power. The 3 kings could not do whatever they wanted. There were also institutions like the House of Representatives and the Congress to restrict their power. If the development path during their term did not suit the interests of the majority, or if there were any personal scandals, they could be removed through impeachment and replaced with a new leader. However, this rarely happened in Modo's history. As long as the Modo 3 kings did not do anything outrageous, they would be able to live through their term peacefully. If the 3 kings insist on doing things their own way, Modo will gradually be emptied out, and their future will be bleak. If they really insist on going down this path, they can only be removed through impeachment," Marco said with a deep voice. Everyone looked at each other. Some were firm, while others were hesitant. They all lowered their voices and discussed their methods softly. At this moment, the opponents of the war in Modo gradually raised their heads and started to plan how to stab the 3 kings in the back. The root of this was Black Star's strength, which made some of the Modo upper echelons feel hopeless. They could not see any possibility of turning the tables. In the Modo civilization, a silver-white stealth high-speed spaceship hovered in a nebula, moving slowly. There was no logo on its outer armor. Inside the cabin, Lodhair and a few officers of the Assassin Society sat around a virtual screen and browsed through the information on the screen. There were many portraits of influential people from all walks of life in the Modo civilization. Some of them had red crosses on their heads, indicating that the assassination was successful. Modo is in chaos internally. Some big shots in the industry were assassinated, causing the local management systems of a few colonial planets to be almost paralyzed. "Our work is very effective," an officer said coldly. Lodhair kept staring at the screen as if he was looking for his next prey. The Assassin Society had been working in Modo for a few months and had caused quite a bit of chaos. They were being hunted by the officials and continued to commit crimes while hiding. "Our actions these days have been too aggressive. We've also lost a lot of people. It's time to lay low for a while," an officer advised. Lodhair nodded, then shook his head and said, "Hide for now, then do something big." As he spoke, he pointed at one of the portraits on the screen. The officers looked in the direction he pointed at, and their expressions froze. Shock and disbelief gradually appeared in their eyes. The target Lodhair chose was one of the 3 kings of Modo. "You want to assassinate the supreme leader of a supercluster civilization?" An officer's eyes widened. "Are you crazy? They have 3 leaders. It's nothing to lose one." Lodhair's tone was calm. "I'll do it myself. Do you know what kind of action this is? If we succeed, the Modo civilization will definitely fight us to the death. Plus, there's no chance of success at all. The 3 kings of Modo are heavily guarded. There's no way we can get close. Plus, they won't leave their mother planet, so it's impossible to assassinate them," someone said anxiously. Lodhair explained, which was rare for him. "Firstly, Modo has always fought us to the death. Secondly, the 3 kings of Modo have many guards, but none of them are beyond grade A guards. At most, they're calamity grades, which isn't beyond the limit of my abilities. Thirdly, Modo's mother planet doesn't have the psionic seal ring like the mother planets of the 3 universal civilizations, so it's completely possible to sneak in." Assassinating the 3 kings of Modo seemed like an impossible mission at first glance, but after careful analysis, he realized that there was actually a chance. After all, although the three kings were leaders, they did not have individual strength, especially since he had deity assassinated. Even if the three kings had beyond grade A magic defense runes on them, this weapon could still penetrate them. The main problem was that regardless of whether the assassination succeeded or not, it would be very difficult to escape unscathed. Everyone was shocked. It was as if they were meeting Lodhair for the first time. Even though they were all assassins who had assassinated some big shots before, in their eyes, this was still an extremely daring plan. It's easy for you to say, but in reality, it's suicide. Everything is possible. Sometimes you just need a little bit of luck. Lodhair narrowed his eyes. The few people present did not know what he was thinking, and he had no intention of explaining. Because of the actions of Rosalind and the three universal civilizations, racial differences within Modo were gradually rising. At this time, if they could assassinate the three kings of one of the races and find a way to push the blame to the radicals of the other two races, it might be able to intensify the conflict and make this idea explode. The result was not hard to imagine. The method was a little underhanded, but as a spy-type assassin, Lodhair did not care if the method was ethical or not. He only cared if it was useful and could complete the goal. It could be said that he would do anything. He had been out for decades and was no longer a pure assassin. He gradually learned to analyze the big picture. Although Black Star did not give him clear instructions on what to do, Lodhair knew very well what Black Star's goal was. He was happy to use a more flexible method to cause more damage to Modo, which was more powerful than a simple assassination. Of course, assassinating the highest leader of Modo and shifting the blame to racial hatred was just an idea. It was extremely difficult, and it was impossible for the Assassin's Society to accomplish it alone. However, the three universal civilizations' forces in Modo were natural help. Lodhair planned to create a fuse so that they could use it as an excuse, just like how the idea they instigated gave him the idea of assassinating the three kings of Modo. Boom! A red figure tumbled toward the desolate planet like a meteor, creating a crater on the surface of the planet. Hela's mouth was bleeding, and her body was embedded in the ground. Just as she pulled herself out, Han Shao suddenly appeared above her and kicked her abdomen with a powerful whip kick. Boom! The little bit of death energy that she had just gathered was scattered by the kick, and a shock wave burst out, making an explosive sound. Hela was hit hard in the abdomen. She arched her body like a shrimp and shot out quickly. She was kicked dozens of kilometers away, creating a long trench. "Are you still going to fight? I've been beating you for 11 hours. If I remember correctly, you've been on the brink of death 3 times and fainted 5 times. Han Shao stood with his arms crossed, looking helpless. "Humph, do you want me to praise you for being so strong? Forget it, let's call it a day. But don't forget, this is only the 3rd time." Hela wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, rubbed her stomach, and stood up. Hearing this, Han Zhao's eyelids twitched. He was currently fulfilling the original agreement, which was to spar with Hela 30 times. There were 27 times left. Thinking of this number, Han Shao felt his waist hurt a little. This was somewhere near Black Star Palace. He had already returned from the free competition zone for a few days. Modo did not send a Beyond Grade A to deal with this decapitation operation, so they would most likely not take the risk later. Furthermore, Han Shao had left behind enough mechanical troops and Lord's Avatar, so he did not continue to stay at the front lines. He turned around and used the king to return to his base. Han Shao originally wanted to focus on studying the Felon and Indestructible Mechanical Troops technology at home, but Hela was not satisfied and insisted on sparring with him. As there was an agreement, he could not go back on his word. Thus, he could only accompany Hela and play with her for a few days. Although Hela was a good punching bag, and felt good to the touch, after a long time, Han Shao could not stand it anymore. After obtaining the exclusive, virtual technology innovation Manison, The research on the felon and indestructible mechanical troops technology went quite smoothly. However, there were still many key technical points to be solved, and it would take time. Therefore, Han Shao did not use his awakening points to push forward the research progress. He should be able to derive the blueprints with his various skills and talents alone. This time, Hela flew back from afar and asked, "What do you think of my progress?" "Not bad," Han Shao said casually. "Tsk, such a perfunctory tone. You're very patient when you're with teacher, but you're so casual with me. Do you not want to accompany me that much?" Hela raised her brows. "What do you think?" Han Shao glared at her. "You masochist, don't you know what you're doing? You're always looking for me to fight and kill, forcing me to beat you up. I'm also very tired." Because of her passion for fighting, Hela's strength increased very quickly. Especially after obtaining the underworld, she had more room for improvement. When Aurora reached beyond Grade A, the underworld would be able to unleash the Hero Spirit Rebirth ability. By then, Hela would be able to reach her peak strength. Han Shao also learned from the underworld's Earth Granny that if Aurora's Esper ability reached beyond Grade A, there would be a qualitative change. She would be able to create a body with life, but without a soul to serve as the carrier for the Hero Spirit Rebirth of the underworld. This ability could be used together with the Soul Swapper. Han Shao told this to Faiden and promised that he would get Aurora to create a body for Chen Xing when the time came. Hela snorted and changed the topic. "There are still 27 sparring sessions. I want one the day after tomorrow. Remember to make time." "You're too hard to satisfy. Can't the interval be longer?" Han Shao was frustrated. "No. It took me so much effort to get you back from teacher. I want you to accompany me to my heart's content." A smile flashed across Hela's eyes. She turned around and returned to the spaceship. Han Shao shook his head helplessly. He was more and more certain that Hela was a masochist. The sparring sessions were meant to test one's strength, but knowing that the gap between them was so huge, she still wanted to fight with him. Wasn't she just asking for a beating? In the end, Hadavi was still the best. Both of them were looking for a beating, but this guy knew better. Even after being beaten, he could still smile, unlike Hela, who always had a cold expression as if he owed her money. Speaking of which, it had been a while since he was licked by Hardaway. He actually missed it. Han Shao was not in a hurry to return. He got his mechanical army to collect some of the broken weapons. While cleaning up the battlefield, he opened the forums and was prepared to read the posts of the idiotic netizens to relax. However, as soon as he opened the flickering world page, his eyes were attracted by a pinned post. World Server War Invitation. Chapter 1189. World Server War. What's bound to come will come. Han Shao browsed through the post and saw that the content was as he expected. He could not help but sigh. The post was jointly published by the Galactic Business Alliance, September Conference, Southeast Alliance, Tropic of Cancer, and many other guild alliances. Simply put, it was a declaration of war aimed at all the player alliances. They agreed on a time and place to launch a large-scale battle. The players of the various alliances usually acted according to the orders of their factions, but this battle had little to do with the factions. It was basically an activity between the players. The same thing happened in Han Zhao's previous life. The various guild alliances agreed to a battle, which eventually evolved into a battle royale involving tens of millions of players. The battle lasted for a few days, and was recorded in the Galaxy Chronicles as the Star Battle of Tarbol. In his previous life, the Great Mechanic Han had also been active in this battle for a period of time, mainly to loot the equipment and items dropped by the players. This time, although the battle had happened, due to the butterfly effect, there were some changes to the specific time and location. The way he saw it, the declaration of war issued by these guild alliances was not sudden. Now that version 4. Zero was at the end. There would not be a chance if they did not create some big news. There were two reasons to organize a battle. One was to kill the members of the enemy alliance openly, and the other was to mobilize the ordinary players to increase the cohesion of the various guild alliances. To put it bluntly, they just can't sit still and want to have a group fight. Han Xiao shook his head. The play among the players had nothing to do with him, so he had no intention of interfering. The location of the battle was not in the Ferdinand battle zone but on a planet called Marison. The army players would run over and join the battle, which would affect the battle at the front line for a certain period of time. Although the army could use orders to restrict the players and not let them run over to participate in the large-scale battle, this would have a negative impact, and Han Xiao had no intention of doing so. After all, the players were not really employees. If the faction restrictions were too excessive, it would be counterproductive. Of course, not only him, the organizations that used the players would be affected to varying degrees. If these factions used a strong attitude to stop the players, it would be beneficial for the army's future recruitment. However, in this battle, the army players will form their own faction, and the scale will be the largest. They'll probably be surrounded, but I won't lose out. Han Zhao's eyes flickered. Originally, at the end of the version, the Pro League was the best promotion opportunity. Many players would spend a large amount of their savings to strengthen themselves. This way, the revenue of the army would skyrocket, and Han Xiao would be able to harvest a large amount of EXP. However, the Pro League had already been held 3 times. Most of the normal players knew that they had no chance and would rather save their experience for the next version. However, a large-scale battle was different. Basically, no player would miss it. It was also a natural promotion opportunity, and it was very beneficial to him. It would allow him to harvest more EXP at the end of version 4.0 and become his reserve during the update period. If I remember correctly, the interval between version 4.0 and version 5.0 should be 40 to 50 years, which is even longer than the previous update. Han Xiao thought to himself. The next version would be the calamity of the supers. The conflict between the Beyond grade as would erupt, and some of the primordial ones would return. Since he had changed so much of the storyline, it would be like a rolling snowball. Version 5.0 would definitely be affected beyond recognition by the butterfly effect. However, this was still a small matter. Han Xiao knew the important people, and was not afraid of changing the original storyline. The biggest problem in the next version was actually the players. The level cap would be opened to level 180, and a large number of calamity grades would appear. The codename Calamity of the Supers was actually a hint to the players that the impact of the next version on the universe would be far greater than that of version 4.0. However, this is good news for me. Han Xiaoxin thought to himself. At that time, the strength of the middle and upper echelons of the explored universe would skyrocket. Although the players would bring chaos, they would also become important helpers for the explored universe against the World Tree Civilization. In the World Tree Civilization version in his previous life, the importance of the players was basically irreplaceable. If there were not tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of Calamity-grade players, the losses of the explored universe would only be greater. On the other hand, the army's strength would skyrocket because of this. The reason he had set up so many versions was to wait for the players to transform. There were still decades until the next version, so he had plenty of time to prepare. Furthermore, Old Manison's words made a lot of sense. The foundation of a mechanic was very important, and he planned to spend decades studying machinery technology while waiting for the effects of Key of Adeptus Mechanicus to grow. Now, the effects of this talent would strengthen itself every few days, continuously increasing his strength. This meant that more and more believers of Manison were joining his embrace. One could imagine the changes in faith within the machinery faith. Various thoughts flashed through his mind. Han Shao suppressed his emotions and continued to browse the forums. After the troops finished cleaning up the battlefield, he boarded the spaceship and returned to Black Star Palace. He made up his mind to complete the remaining 27 sparring sessions within 2 months. Within the Red Empire, in a certain secret military training base, God, who was wearing the uniform of a high-level dynasty officer, was strolling around the training base. He was not in a good mood. Just a moment ago, God received a message from the dynasty's upper echelons, telling him to postpone the original plan indefinitely. They were going to borrow his Esper ability to try and analyze the core energy of the evolution cube. When they were planning this plan, there was no problem with the idea. However, the situation changed too quickly, and it disrupted the rhythm of many of the dynasty's hardliners. Now, Black Star's strength and status had reached a whole new level, so this plan became more and more risky. Therefore, the upper echelons had no choice but to stop the plan temporarily. They did not want to provoke Black Star, but they also wanted to protect their trump card, God. The reason for this was that Black Star's terrifying rise made the situation change so quickly that no one could react in time. This was why God was in such a strange mood. Black Star's growth speed was even faster than his smurf. It was hard for him not to feel depressed. Black Star. Black Star. God muttered to himself. God mumbled to himself. Without realizing it, he walked to a public training facility. The sound of an intense battle could be heard. He looked over and saw a low-grade elite class fighting each other under the supervision of the instructor. They looked like a group of freshmen. At this time, there were 2 grade C pugilists fighting. One of them had the upper hand, and the other was barely holding on. It looked like it was only a matter of time before he lost. As expected, in just a few seconds, the winner of this battle was decided. The person who was at a disadvantage was kicked away and slid on the ground, stopping right in front of God. Carrot, you lost again. The instructor frowned, looked at the loser, and said with a deep voice, "Your record is 0 wins and 9 losses. That's ridiculous." Sorry. Carrot rubbed his chest, stood up, and smiled helplessly. The instructor was not happy. He yelled, "You're at the bottom of almost every test. I really don't know why the higher-ups arranged for you to be in my elite class. You're dragging down the results of the entire class. I let you stay in the class because you're hard-working enough. However, if you're still at the bottom in the next test, I won't give you another chance. I'll definitely kick you out." As soon as he said that, all the students in the class looked at Carrot coldly, not bothering to hide their dislike for him. Although these people were students, they were also talents selected by the dynasty from various troops to further their studies in this secret base. Furthermore, this class was an elite class. They were all talented dynasty officers who were among the top in their respective troop. The opportunity to further their studies was extremely precious, so these students treasured it very much. It was also because of this that they did not like Carrot at all. Carrot was too mediocre and did not look like an elite. Logically speaking, he did not have the right to be specially trained. Because this opportunity was not easy to come by, these elites all felt that it was unfair. In their eyes, a mediocre soldier was actually studying with them. The first thing they thought of was words like connections, so they subconsciously ostracized Carrot. Furthermore, they were all soldiers and believed in the strong. Carrot's ability was too weak, so they looked down on him from the bottom of their hearts. Naturally, they would not be nice to him. Sensing everyone's cold gazes, Carrot sighed in his mind. A long time ago, he had already accepted the fact that he was mediocre. He knew from the start that these people were all elites who were far more talented than him, so he was not depressed at all. The opportunity to be specially trained was also thanks to Black Star. Although he was a passive person, he was not someone who did not know how to cherish opportunities. However, he had already tried his best within the limits of his ability, but he still could not catch up to the growth of these elites. There was nothing he could do. God observed quietly from the side, his eyes flashing. A while ago, he heard from someone that Black Star had high hopes for entering the training base. His name was Carrot. Because it was related to Black Star, God remembered it. Today was the first time he met the person. He sized him up and felt that Carrot exuded the word mediocre from head to toe. God thought that he had good eyesight, but he did not find anything special about Carrot. He could not help but feel confused. Why did Black Star have high hopes for this guy in the past? His eyesight is famous for being accurate. He shouldn't have made a mistake. God could not understand. He thought for a while and waved at the instructor. The instructor had noticed God long ago. He immediately walked over with a smile. Almost everyone in the base knew that God was the person who had the highest chance of reaching beyond grade A. He had received a lot of resources from the base, so his status was not low. God, what's the matter? That newbie called Carrot, regardless of whether he passed the test or not, let him stay in the base, God said in a low voice. Hearing this, the instructor was stunned. According to the results of the test, Carrot was destined to be eliminated and leave the training base. He did not expect God to plead for him. That's not very good. This person has no value. Keeping him around will be a waste of teaching resources. Try to make an exception. God did not see anything special about Carrot, but because Black Star had high hopes for him, he wanted to keep Carrot around to observe him more. Han Xiao stayed in Black Star Palace and did not go to the front lines. Time passed quickly, and a month and a half passed very quickly. On this day, a shocking piece of news suddenly broke out in the Modo civilization. The Three-Race General Assembly suddenly announced the start of the impeachment process against the current Modo Three Kings. In history, the impeachment of the Supreme Leader had not happened many times. This immediately shocked the entire society. As the name suggested, this organization was jointly controlled by the three race councilors. It had a wide range of power, including the right to impeach the Supreme Leader. The people leading the impeachment this time were 33 councilors. They jointly proposed the impeachment, and the Three-Race General Assembly passed it with a large number of votes. They quickly started preparations. It was obvious that they had come prepared. Although they were shocked, the Modo people were quite supportive. This was because the chaos in the civilization had seriously interfered with the normal operation of society. Although this was the enemy's doing, the people did not care so much. They directly pushed the blame to the Supreme Leader, which saved them a lot of trouble. Marco gathered more opposition parties, and they became more and more powerful. They found a valid reason, claiming that they were restoring law and order and opposing the war. They used a long and rigorous report to analyze Modo's extremely low chance of winning in this war as evidence to oppose the Modo Three Kings' decision to continue supporting the expeditionary army. They called it a meaningless sacrifice. This statement was approved by quite a number of officials and people. Not everyone was willing to sacrifice their current interests for the so-called future development space. Now that the pressure was increasing, the opposition also became more and more intense. The Modo Three Kings did not expect the opposition to suddenly jump out and stab them in the back. At this critical moment, the three of them were instantly disrupted. Chapter 1190. As soon as the impeachment process started, the political world of the Modo civilization became lively. All the factions were dragged into it and forced to take side. The Modo Three Kings had no choice but to turn their attention back to the country to deal with the impeachment of the opposition. The three of them had no choice but to mobilize the people under them to fight for power. Luckily, they had been in business for many years, and their positions were deeply rooted. It was not that easy to topple them. There were very few authoritarian advanced civilizations. Taking the position of the highest leader did not mean that one would gain supreme power immediately. Politics was the art of compromise. Power came from obedience. Even the leader of a civilization had to gain the support of all the factions and cultivate loyal subordinates in order to strengthen their position. Only then could their power increase. Otherwise, any order they gave would be obstructed by their political enemies. Being the highest leader did not mean that they would be unconditionally obeyed. There were also many people who had their eyes on this position. In the following days, the public saw the changes in the political world. The Modo Three Kings and the opposition led by Marco all showed their abilities. The day before yesterday, someone resigned. The day before yesterday, someone was summoned. Today, someone handed in a new report. Tomorrow, some big shot might show up again. The public could not take it all in. The hearings started by the three races were held one after another. The opposition presented a lot of evidence, turning some secrets that were not supposed to be known to the public into evidence, causing an uproar among the public time and time again. The Kundi race incident was one of them. The opposition summoned key witnesses and asked them to provide the signatures of the Modo Three Kings who agreed to this battle plan. They also used evidence to prove that Black Star was targeting Modo because of the Kundi race incident. Therefore, they came to the conclusion that the Modo Three Kings provoked Black Star for the civilization and were the culprit behind Modo's current predicament. The opposition used this as evidence and criticized the Modo Three Kings for making the wrong decision. They believed that the current Modo Three Kings were not capable enough to continue being the leader of the civilization. There was a lot of similar evidence. The opposition threw out some of the shameful things and blamed them all on the Modo Three Kings. They emphasized to the Tri-Species General Assembly that the Modo Three Kings were not capable enough and suggested a change. This wasn't an unjust accusation. As the highest leader, even if the plan wasn't thought up by the Three Kings, it still needed the signatures of the Three Kings before it could be carried out. He could only take the blame for this. The endless accusations and smears made the situation more and more unfavorable for the Three Kings of Modo. However, the Three Kings' positions were not so easily shaken. Their relationships were complicated. Many factions, including the military, were strong supporters. These factions all had their own representatives in the General Assembly of the Three Species. They worked together to stop the impeachment process, which was very effective. The military was a firm supporter of the war. They led more senior officials. Compared to the supporters of the Modo Three Kings, the opposition led by Marco was still not enough. The investigation soon ran into obstacles. Therefore, the opposition set their sights on the next Modo Three Kings candidate, hoping to get the support of these so-called princes. In the end, they failed without any suspense. As the impeachment storm fermented, the matter gradually turned into a political conflict. The Three Kings of Modo had already been delayed for too long. They did not want to waste more energy here, so they did not hold back at all. Therefore, this farce came to an end after a short while. The final result was that the General Assembly of the Three Species rejected the opposition's impeachment process. The impeachment ended in failure. It was basically a lose-lose situation. The political enemies had been dealt with. In order to save their reputation, the Three Kings of Modo decided to give a public speech and give a summary response to the impeachment. Bainide Square, one of the landmark buildings in the capital of the Modo civilization. It was usually a tourist spot with a lot of tourists. Today, it was requisitioned by the government as the venue for the Three Kings' speech. The venue had already been set up. Due to the unfavorable public opinion, the Three Kings of Modo did not give a speech in the government building this time. Instead, they chose to give a speech in front of the public. Many officials came with them. The selected audience filled the square, creating a scene where the senior officials were very close to the public. A cordon was set up outside the square. A large number of security guards were stationed there, guarding the line expressionlessly. Right now, an endless crowd had already gathered outside. Many people held banners in their hands. Most of them had opposing slogans such as Three Kings Step Down written on them. These were all protesters. The crowd was agitated. Although the opposition lost, it caused irreparable damage to the reputation of the three kings of Modo this time. The official seats were around the podium. The opposition was all arranged at the edge. They were obviously left out. The others did not even want to look in this direction, not wanting to have any connection with the opposition who lost. "I didn't expect the three kings to invite us," one of the opposition murmured to himself. "They want us to be humiliated in public to strengthen the effect of the speech." Marco's expression did not look good. He knew very well that at this point, the three kings of Modo did not invite them, the opposition, to attend on purpose just to ease their relationship. They must be criticizing their actions from the standpoint of the victors. The opposition naturally jumped out to impeach the three kings of Modo because they were confident of winning. However, they lost in the end. All their trump cards were neutralized, and some witnesses changed their statements. Marco could only say that he was not as good as them. In fact, there were still some opposition who did not jump out. They did not dare to take the risk together. In order to change the development path of the civilization, Marco was willing to take the risk. However, in order to keep their positions, these hidden opposition dared not take any action even if they disagreed with the decision of the three kings of Modo. They just watched the army die meaninglessly. Although he lost, he also looked down on these cowards. After a while, the three kings of Modo arrived together. They walked to the podium, and the focused light chased after the three of them. Warm applause immediately sounded in the square, as if it had been rehearsed, suppressing the curses of the countless onlookers outside the square. The three of them waved their arms at the same time, looked around at the audience, and smiled as a greeting. While the Modo three kings scanned the surroundings, their eyes purposely paused on where Marco and the other members of the opposition were before moving away. The camera then switched to the members of the opposition, recording their expressionless or forced smiles. "Humph!" Marco clapped his hands and snorted inwardly. Of course, he understood the look that the three kings of Modo were giving him just now. They had the attitude of a victor, ready to settle the score with him later. The applause gradually stopped, and one of the three kings of Modo finally spoke loudly. "My compatriots, Modo is a great civilization. We've been united since the exploration era, and generations of kings have led us to create development miracles one after another." After the opening speech, the three of them started reading according to the script. They directly mentioned the recent social unrest and impeachment, admitting that it was the influence of their own decision, but emphasizing that it was the enemy's scheme. They said, "Because Modo is on the right path, the enemy wants us to retreat, so they use all kinds of schemes to make us fear them." The three of them also explained why they kept sending troops to the flickering world, saying that the reason for this decision was for the future of the civilization, and so on. In the long speech, the three kings refuted and explained the impeachment project one by one, trying to save their own reputation and that of the government. What the three kings of Modo said was reasonable. There was applause from time to time. Some onlookers were gradually convinced, and the number of protesters decreased. Other than the reporters, countless onlookers were also recording the speech. In the crowd outside the cordon of the square, a tall and thin man held his multifunctional communication terminal up high to record the speech. He looked like an ordinary person, but in fact, he was one of the Radiant Federation's secret informants responsible for collecting intelligence. He was sent here today to record first-hand footage. The opposition failed, but the three kings of Modo are also greatly weakened. "That's good news," this informant mumbled to himself as he worked. He had already finished what he wanted to see. Now that the dust had settled, there was nothing else to be found. Now, he could only wait for the winner's declaration. This informant did not think that he would be able to find anything valuable. He was only here to join in the fun because it was his duty. However, at this moment, a flash of light appeared in the corner of his eyes. This informant turned around subconsciously. He looked through the crowd and saw a faint light on the back of a hooded man's hand. It seemed like some mark was glowing. The next moment, a sharp golden light suddenly flashed across his vision and shot out like lightning. This informant turned around immediately and saw this light shoot toward one of the three kings of Modo, who was giving a speech. Dang! A blue magic shield suddenly opened and blocked this light. The Beyond grade, a defensive enchantment on the three kings of Modo, was activated. It could block many types of attacks. The speech was suddenly interrupted. The three kings of Modo realized what was happening and looked at the incoming attack in shock. It was a golden spear. It was Lodhair's weapon, the deity assassinator. An assassin? The security guards around were shocked. The Calamity grade bodyguards standing behind the three kings were shocked. They immediately used their abilities to protect the three kings. Although they reacted quickly, it was already too late. The Beyond grade, a defensive enchantment with amazing resistance, only blocked the deity assassinator for a second before it was penetrated instantly. The spear nailed one of the three kings to the ground. His face was still filled with shock. This sudden turn of events stunned everyone present. Someone tried to assassinate the three kings? After their brains finished analyzing this information, countless faces were filled with fear at the same time. Run. Murder. Call a doctor. Lock down the square immediately. No, lock down the entire planet. The next moment, chaos broke out. Both the audience inside and outside the venue fled in panic. The security guards yelled, protecting the remaining two kings as they left the venue while searching the venue. The officials were shocked and fled in a hurry under the protection of their bodyguards. The lively speech venue turned into a mess in the blink of an eye. Who sent this assassin? Crazy! Marco fled in panic with a face full of shock. Assassinating the highest leader of a civilization on the mother planet of a supercluster civilization was suicidal. This had not happened for many years. Even the three universal civilizations would not do it. Who would have thought it would happen so suddenly? The three kings of Modo usually stayed in the central government building. Today they were giving a public speech, so it became a perfect opportunity. The most unbelievable thing was that the assassin actually succeeded. The Beyond grade, a defensive enchantments on the three kings were like paper. In the chaotic crowd, the intelligence agent of the Radiant Federation opened his eyes wide. He turned around, trying to find the hooded man, but the other party had already disappeared. Where did this fierce person come from? This is a completely suicidal attack. There's no way he can escape from the mother planet of Modo. The intelligence agent's face twitched. His eyes were filled with disbelief. He did not expect to see such a huge piece of information with his own eyes. Almost in an instant, his professionalism made him keenly aware of the opportunity to take advantage of the situation. Chapter 1191. The news of one of the three kings of the Modo civilization being assassinated quickly spread throughout the entire galactic society. That night, one of the three kings was announced to be dead. This sudden change shocked the entire universe. Be it the officials of the advanced civilizations or the ordinary people of the galactic society, their first reaction when they heard this news could be summed up in one word. What the F***ck? The one who died was not a nobody but the leader of a supercluster civilization, second only to the leaders of the three universal civilizations. For someone of this status to be assassinated, it seemed to be something from the previous era in the eyes of the galactic residents. Who knew how long it had been since such shocking news happened? In the minds of ordinary people, it was impossible for the leaders of advanced civilizations to be assassinated. Because of this, it was even more unbelievable when it happened. This fully demonstrated that everyone was equal in the face of death, and no one could escape death for sure. After the assassination incident broke out, the entire Modo Mother planet entered the highest level of martial law. Countless soldiers searched for the culprit, even digging 3 feet into the ground to find the culprit. Many spies of other civilizations were implicated. Quite a number of these people were monitored by the Modo civilization, but Modo did not make a move. They were waiting to catch the big fish. Now, however, they could not care about anything else. They captured all these people and interrogated them. The Modo civilization immediately restricted the release of the video. At the same time, they quickly released an announcement, using extremely harsh words to emphasize that the assassination of the leader of the Modo civilization was a provocation and insult to the entire civilization. They expressed that they would investigate the cause and effect of this matter thoroughly. They also claimed that there was a high chance that this was done by an enemy. Once the identity of the culprit was found, they would not let the matter rest. The assassination incident shocked and confused the people. Under such circumstances, the announcement made by the Modo civilization immediately guided the thoughts of the people, causing them to be angry at a common enemy. They tried to focus this anger on the enemy. Under normal circumstances, this method was correct. It could make the people united against the enemy. However, the various organizations of the 3 universal civilizations hidden in the Modo civilization would not sit back and watch this happen. They kept fanning the flames, releasing all kinds of opinions to affect the effect of the Modo civilization's announcement, changing the thoughts of the people. The method was not fancy, but used more conspiracy theories to come up with all sorts of new speculations for the assassination case. It could be mainly divided into 2 directions. One was to lead the people's thoughts to the path of political assassination, claiming that the opposition had just failed to seize power and had the motive to take the risk to assassinate the 3 kings. It was to make it seem as if it was true. The other direction was to spread rumors that the assassins who claimed to have assassinated one of the 3 kings were actually radicals from the other 2 races that were born out of the racial divide recently. This was to catalyze the evolution of the racial divide. Both of these theories had loopholes, but conspiracy theories had always been popular. While the quantum network facilitated communication in the galactic society, it also became an important platform to set the pace. All kinds of real and fake information were too much for people to take in, weakening the judgment of the people. In addition, the assassination made it difficult for a large number of people to maintain their rationality, so these 2 theories were actually supported by many people. At the same time, dozens of foreign terrorist forces joined in the fun and announced that they would take responsibility for this matter. It was as if this had become an opportunity to establish their status in the gray world. All of a sudden, the racial divide and the people who angrily denounced the political assassination kept growing. The seeds of chaos gradually took root and sprouted. Countless voices of condemnation appeared on the internet. Until something big happened, one would never know what kind of strange opinions would appear. They could always break the worldview of the entire society time and time again. The Modo civilization was in a terrible state because of this assassination. They did not have the time to slowly deal with the public opinion. They could only take a tough approach and forbid the people from discussing these 2 possibilities. Although the upper echelons knew that this would cause a backlash, they could only choose the lesser of 2 evils and stop the rumors from spreading first. The assassination of the 3 kings had caused a huge uproar. Countless powers had turned their attention over, and a storm was brewing under everyone's watchful eyes. On the other hand, Han Xiao, who was far away in the flickering world, also received the news. What the F***ck? Someone tried to assassinate the 3 kings of Modo. Whose cutie is this? Han Xiao's eyes widened in shock. He had similar thoughts before, but he did not put them into action in the end, nor did he order his subordinates to carry out the assassination. The reason he did not do it was mainly because of his identity. He was now a hero created by the world order, so it was impossible for him to assassinate the leader of an advanced civilization. However, if someone else carried out the assassination, Han Shao would be happy to see it happen. To him, it was like a fisherman taking advantage of a sandpiper and a clam fighting. He could roughly guess the various consequences of this. Whether the Modo civilization caught the murderer or not, they would have to give the results of the investigation. Even if they could not find out the truth, they would have to find a good scapegoat to resolve the social conflicts in the country and give the people a direction to vent their emotions. It all depended on what Modo chose to resolve this. If they wanted to minimize the problem, it would be the most convenient to push it to the terrorist organizations outside the country. If they wanted to cause trouble, both the three universal civilizations and himself would be targeted. This way, Modo would have a new motive for the flickering war. They would continuously send out troops and occupy the high ground of public opinion. As for the truth, who knew what was going on? Because the Modo civilization prohibited the release of videos, he could not see the video of the assassination. However, he did not think the three universal civilizations were the murderers. There was no need for that at all. Could it be that they were really extremists? Han Shao felt an unbearable itch in his heart. Which idiot is so reckless? He's practically sacrificing himself for others. Just as he was sighing to himself, his communicator suddenly rang. He picked it up and glanced at it. It was an encrypted communication request from Lothair. Han Zhao's expression froze. His heart skipped a beat and he suddenly had a bad feeling. Sending me a message at this time? No way. After hesitating for 2 seconds, he picked up the call and heard the sound of steady breathing in the communication channel. Lothair? Han Shao subconsciously lowered his voice. Please don't tell me that you're the one who did this. It was me. Hearing this answer, Han Zhao's vision turned black. What the F***ck, I was guessing for a long time. After confirming the look, it turned out to be my iron head. This is too exciting. My little heart can't take it. Are you crazy? I didn't order you to do this. You told me to do my best to disrupt Modo's social order. I understood your strategic intention, Lothair said with a serious tone. So, you decided to assassinate the Modo Three Kings on your own? Han Shao felt like he was about to explode. I did not disappoint you. You're really a F***king genius. Han Zhao's mouth twitched. Even most players can't compare to you in terms of subjective initiative. As expected of someone who dared to assassinate God. You're so reckless that my trigeminal nerve hurts. I'm clearly a stable man. Why do I have such an iron-headed subordinate? Taking 2 deep breaths, Han Shao calmed himself down. At this point, he could only accept reality and clean up after him. Where are you? Have you escaped Modo's mother planet? I've already left. Otherwise, I wouldn't have contacted you. Lothair briefly described what happened to him. He was not really reckless. He had snuck into Modo's mother planet more than a month ago and left a few backup plans. He had been waiting for an opportunity. Because he could not get in touch with the Three Kings, he had been waiting patiently. A few days ago, when he saw the Three Kings speech announcement, he knew that his chance had come. Thus, he made the necessary arrangements before taking action. After so many assassinations, Lothair had accumulated a lot of experience in running. He was already an expert. From the successful assassination to the Modo troops executing the lockdown order, there was a reaction process. He took advantage of this time to successfully escape. The whole process was orderly. However, he was only safe for now. He still had to face the Modo civilization's pursuit. After hearing Lothair's story, Han Shao said helplessly, "It's not easy to escape from their territory. You won't be able to escape so easily in their territory. Stop all your assassination missions for now. You've already killed one leader, so there's no need to continue targeting them. Focus on escaping, and I'll see if I can bring you back." Since he had already done it, he could not just watch Lothair fall into Modo's hands. This kind of thing could be done but could not be said. Otherwise, the disadvantages would outweigh the benefit. As long as Modo did not catch him and there was no solid evidence, he could deny it afterward. It would be impossible for Han Shao not to blame Lothair for acting on his own accord. He had been sitting on the fence, but now there was a risk. Assassinating the three kings was not part of his plan. However, there were also benefits in this. The assassin was one of them, which meant that the damage this incident caused to the Modo civilization was also part of the mission progress of Kundi race leader's last wish. Maybe he would complete this mission sooner than he expected. On the Modo civilization's mother planet, Bang, a group of soldiers broke into the office, looked around, and said coldly, "Marco, come with us for investigation." Marco slowly got up with a bitter expression. All the opposition parties had become the focus of internal investigation. Everyone was implicated because they had a suspicious motive. No matter how wrong they felt, they could only accept the investigation obediently. The sudden assassination had also trapped them, the opposition. At this moment, Marco only had one thought in his mind. F***ck. Chapter 1192. In the conference room with 3 times the security, the 2 kings of Modo and the upper echelons held an emergency meeting. Everyone present was someone who had seen the world, so they got over the shock very quickly. As soon as they recovered, they felt endless anger and fear. "Did you find out who did it?" The 2 kings of Modo were livid. Every time they thought back to that scene, they would feel fear. If it had not been their unlucky colleague who gave the speech, they might have been the ones who died. Who dared to openly assassinate them, the leaders of their civilization. This was a challenge to the entire Modo civilization. The 2 of them were furious. "We haven't caught the culprit yet, but the intelligence department has submitted the analysis report of the video and found a match in the database." A senior intelligence officer operated on the table with a serious expression. The next moment, a green virtual screen rose from the table in front of every officer, displaying the same document. The weapon used by the culprit is a golden spear. According to the data, the owner of this weapon is a highly wanted criminal with the code name My Secret Thorn. The earliest record was during the Kundi race incident. This person committed many assassination cases back then and disappeared for more than 10 years. Recently, he became active in the country again and killed some elites of various industries. According to the analysis, O Secret Thorn has the strength of a top calamity grade and is suspected to be at the level of a beyond grade A seed. The golden spear he used is a powerful enchanted weapon, but because there are too few observation records, we don't have much information. However, from this assassination case, we can infer that My Secret Thorn's weapon has extremely strong energy penetration and is extremely lethal to powerful targets. On the other hand, a Secret Thorn might be a gang. It seems like many of the assassination cases committed by other people are related to him. We suspect that he formed an organization in the more than 10 years he disappeared. The assassinations targeting the Modo civilization were not all done by the Assassins Society. There were other organizations that were active in the dark. There were many enemies of advanced civilizations. Seeing that Modo was in chaos, some of them took advantage of the situation. Some of them were black market assassination organizations, and some were foreign terrorist organizations. There were also racial radicals and criminals who pretended to be assassins to commit crimes. The law and order of society were unstable, and the police were having a hard time. After the 2 kings of Modo finished reading the report, one of them yelled, "I'm more concerned about who ordered this assassin. Which power does he belong to?" The appearance of the secret assassin is obviously related to the Kundi race incident. Back then, the main parties involved were the Red Empire and their allies. Although we don't know which organization the assassin belongs to, he definitely has something to do with the Red Empire. He might be a soldier of the dynasty secretly nurtured, or he might be an officer of one of the dynasty's beyond grade A allies. So, this operation might be ordered by the Red Empire? The two kings of Modo looked uncertain. That's not necessarily. The intelligence officer thought about it and said with a deep voice, the situation back then was different from now. More than 10 years ago, the Beyond Grade A Association had yet to be established, and the dynasty still had enough control over their Beyond Grade A allies. The assassination back then was indeed related to the dynasty, but the situation has changed now. We cannot rule out the possibility that this incident was a private action of the Beyond Grade As. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed. A figure subconsciously appeared in their mind. Could it be Black Star? The Modo II kings were shocked and furious. Although the Red Empire was a gangster, the risk of assassinating the leader of an advanced civilization was far greater than the benefit. There was basically no reason for them to do so. After thinking about it, it seemed like only Black Star, who had a deep grudge against them, had such a motive. Black Star. He gained the upper hand in the flickering war and made us suffer a lot, but does that make him think he can do whatever he wants? How dare he do such a thing? He's too arrogant. Modo will never let him go. The two kings of Modo were furious. This way they had one more goal in the flickering war. Not only was it for the future of the civilization, but it was also to make Black Star pay with his life. The two of them believed that after this incident, the entire civilization would be united against a common enemy. However, this time, one of the upper echelons hesitated and objected. But I don't think that's right. What's Black Star doing this for? Is it just a momentary revenge? That doesn't make sense. He's a person who prioritizes his own interests. He gained the upper hand in the flickering world and took the initiative. To be honest, he could have surrounded the enemy and made us suffer again and again. There's no need for him to assassinate the leader of a civilization. Doing so would even bring him risk. If he's exposed, the hero image that the three universal civilizations created for him will be heavily damaged, and he'll fall into a passive position. Black Star doesn't look like someone who would make such a rash decision. After hearing this, the upper echelons present frowned, shocked and doubtful. Makes sense. Black Star wouldn't do something meaningless. If the assassination was his idea, he must have done it to achieve some goal. What goal could it be? The room quieted down. Everyone frowned as they racked their brains, trying to come up with a solution. After more than 10 seconds, an intelligence officer's eyes sparkled. He stood up and said, "I think I understand Black Star's plan." "Hurry up and tell us." Everyone's eyes immediately gathered on him. This intelligence officer's eyes flickered, and his tone was firm. "Black Star is doing this to prevent us from surrendering." Huh! Everyone tilted their heads in unison, a big question mark popping up in their heads. "You explain." The two kings of Modo frowned. "My guess is this. Black Star knows that we know very well that Modo has no chance of breaking out of this situation in his hands. He's afraid that we'll give up on the flickering war and withdraw the expeditionary army. This way, he won't be able to continue attacking the enemy. Therefore, in order to prevent us from retreating, he secretly ordered the assassins to do this, publicly provoking the face of the entire Modo civilization. It's because he predicted our reaction in advance. Whether the assassins are his people or not, we'll definitely suspect him. Then, because we're enemies, he thinks that there's a high chance that we'll publicly claim that Black Star is the mastermind and damage his reputation in this way. This way, we'll fulfill his wish. Once we claim that Black Star is the mastermind, under the eyes of the entire universe, we'll have to pursue the matter to the end. We can't withdraw the expeditionary army easily. Instead, we'll have to keep sending in more troops. Otherwise, the outside world will think that we're giving in. As an advanced civilization whose leader was assassinated, there is no way we will compromise. This way, Black Star has successfully maintained the situation and prevented us from retreating. He will continue to encircle our base and attack reinforcements, constantly chipping away at our troop. Everyone shuddered. They quickly thought back and realized that their thoughts were actually the same as this speculation. They could not help but feel chills down their spines. As expected, our reactions were all predicted by Black Star. Luckily, we predicted Black Star's prediction. One of the two kings of Moto shook his head and said, No, Black Star knows that we'll accuse him. Isn't he afraid of losing his reputation? I think he might not be afraid. An official pondered and said, If we don't catch the culprit and have no evidence, with Black Star's heroic image, who will the outside world believe? Even if we have evidence, Black Star can still deny it and say that we're framing him. Plus, his heroic image was specially created by the three universal civilizations. Although Black Star enjoys the benefits, he's also bound by his reputation. If he can get rid of it, Black Star won't lose anything. The three universal civilizations might be more anxious than him. As soon as he said that, many people nodded and felt that it made sense. The two kings of Moto suppressed their anger and said, Then, if Black Star really did it, not only will we not pursue the matter, but we'll even help him cover it up? Impossible. Don't even think about it. The two of them admitted that this inference made sense, but in order to not fall for Black Star's scheme, they, as an advanced civilization, would not pursue the culprit but instead hide the culprit and suffer such a huge loss for nothing? This is ridiculous. Do you think I don't care about my reputation? We're a supercluster civilization. Why would we be scared by something like this? This is such a horrible incident. We'll deal with it however we want. There's no way we'll compromise. This time, the intelligence officer who made this inference hesitated for a while before speaking again. Actually, there's another possibility. Continue. Ahem, I just thought about it. What if a third party predicted our reaction based on our grudge with Black Star, so they sent someone to pretend to be the secret assassin or bribed this assassin and deliberately assassinated Black Star in front of everyone, causing a huge commotion and framing Black Star, deepening our grudge with Black Star? Would that be the case? Hearing this, everyone was shocked. There were many examples of third parties instigating conflicts in history. This inference was completely possible. Who would do such a thing? Needless to say, it could be Moto's enemy, or it could be Black Star's enemy. They secretly instigated conflicts and watched us fight each other until both sides suffered losses. So, if that's the case, we should withdraw the expeditionary army so that we won't fall into the enemy's trap? The two kings of Moto were led into thinking again and again. They were completely confused. They couldn't be blamed for overthinking things. Smart people would always make all kinds of assumptions about an undetermined event, guessing the reasons behind it, and deducing things from one level to the fourth or fifth level. However, they didn't think that the matter was actually very simple. It was just a hothead acting on his own initiative, and everything else was just him fooling himself. Your Excellencies, we're just making assumptions now. We can't confirm that Black Star is the culprit yet. Catching the culprit is our top priority. An upper echelon reminded them. The two kings of Moto came back to their senses, nodded heavily, and shouted, Yes, that's right. No matter what, track the killer with all your might. We must catch him and find out who the mastermind is. Even if it's really Black Star's trap, Moto will not back down or compromise. Then, the two of them looked extremely gloomy. They felt depressed. They felt that no matter what choice they made, they would not be able to escape from Black Star's grasp. An opponent like this was so scary. Everyone looked at each other. Many people wanted to say something but did not say anything in the end. If it really was Black Star's trap, then the two kings of Moto's decision was exactly what he wanted. In some people's eyes, the two kings had lost their minds. The opposers who jumped out were being investigated, but there were still some opposers who did not jump out. They were getting more and more uncertain. Maybe Marco and the others were right. It was time for a new leader. In the corner, seeing that no one was paying attention to him anymore, the intelligence officer who made the conjecture sat down. He only had one thought in his mind. Help me up, I can still imagine. If Moto only suspected Black Star, then the Red Empire was certain. So, Black Star might be doing this to prevent the Moto civilization from backing down? In the Red Empire's ruler's office, Urinril crossed her arms and rested her chin on her hand. Her eyes flickered. Moto had blocked the video, so the assassination process could not be seen through normal channels. However, the three universal civilizations naturally had their ways to get the video. It had nothing to do with virtual technology, but because they had accumulated enough intelligence channels over the years. In this regard, the accumulation of advanced civilizations was not something a beyond grade A could compare to. For example, Han Zhao's influence in the primeval Star River was limited. Although he could easily get the video with his virtual technology, he still had to go through a process. He had to descend from the flickering world and launch a virtual intrusion to get the video. Not doing it personally but still wanting to get the information immediately was within the scope of intelligence channels. During the Kundi race incident, Black Star and the dynasty had a tacit understanding when it came to assassinations. Because she had seen it before, even if she did not know the exact identity of the Golden Spear user, she could conclude that this person was Black Star's subordinate. Therefore, she immediately thought that the assassination of the Moto Three Kings was part of Black Star's plan. Black Star is more daring than I thought. He even dares to assassinate the leaders of advanced civilizations. Although it's a little against the rules, it seems to be quite effective. Looking at the report on the screen, Urinril's eyes sparkled. Not long after receiving the news, she also saw through Black Star's plan. The three universal civilizations also did not want the Moto civilization to back down so quickly. Their goal was to beat up these supercluster civilizations. Black Star's method was in line with the interests of the three universal civilizations. Wonderful, wonderful, however, this is still a little too much. Urinril stopped smiling. A beyond grade A assassinating the leader of an advanced civilization was a very sensitive matter. It would touch the nerves of all advanced civilizations, including the three universal civilizations. Just thinking about the meaning behind this was enough to know how bad the nature of this was and how much the leaders of the advanced civilizations feared it. This was because this was what Beyond Grade As did when they were first born. Using a single soldier's combat power to kill a leader was much more cost-effective than using it in a large-scale war. One could imagine how terrifying a Beyond Grade A who focused on being an assassin could be. During the Exploration Era War, the Beyond Grade A assassins who specifically targeted the leaders of civilizations were the nightmare of all the surviving civilizations. The three universal civilizations built the psionic seal ring on their mother planet mainly to prevent other civilizations from attacking their mother planet, but they also prevented Beyond Grade A assassins from targeting the leaders of civilizations. This assassination case reminded Urinril of the tragic examples from the Exploration Era. Once someone made such a mistake, it was very likely to have a far-reaching impact that was detrimental to the advanced civilizations. Sigh. After pondering for a long time, Urinril finally sighed. Times had changed. No matter what, Black Star was an important ally recognized by the dynasty, a national pillar. On this matter, she had no choice but to clean up after him. Logically speaking, it was impossible for her to do something like betray an ally. I wonder if Black Star's subordinates managed to escape. Just in case, Let's get the people hiding in the Moto civilization to provide some help. Chapter 1193. You have triggered the mission, escape. Mission introduction. Your comrade Lodhair succeeded in assassinating the leader of the Moto civilization and is being hunted down. He is trying to escape from the Moto civilization and needs help. Mission requirements. Help Lodhair escape from the Moto civilization. Reward. 800 million experience, 2 random rewards, 1 chance to draw Lodhair's ability. Milestone: the civilization leader assassin remarks. Minus 3000 Moto civilization favorability if you accept this mission. The mission only appeared now? On the other side, Han Xiao, who was in Black Star Palace, suddenly received a notification on the interface, which surprised and confused him. Glancing at the mission introduction, Han Xiao accepted it without hesitation. His favorability with the Moto civilization had already reached the core of the planet, so there was no room for it to go any lower. Saving Lodhair was something he was destined to do, so it was naturally a good thing to have an additional reward. He was just curious as to why the mission did not appear when he was chatting with Lodhair and only triggered when he made the necessary arrangements. I've made all the necessary arrangements. I wonder if I can save Lodhair. Han Xiao shook his head. He was not 100% confident. Pessimistically, the success rate was only about 95%. Ever since he became the consultant of the 3 universal civilizations, the Black Star Corps' branch construction had become much more convenient. They even had a branch in the primeval Star River. Although he could not build an intelligence network in the supercluster civilization in that star field, their armed forces were not bad. Han Xiao also left a lot of mechanical soldiers there, and even a king mechanical suit as insurance. After receiving Lodhair's news, he immediately ordered his troops to sneak into Moto with the king and rescue Lodhair. As long as they could connect, Lodhair could use the king to get out of danger. As for the others in the Assassin's Society, they could only work hard on their own. However, these people were not the main target, and they did not know that the boss behind this was Black Star, so there was not much information that could be leaked. The King mechanical suit was the universal treasure and equipment that Han Xiao had built the most. Although it was expensive to build, ever since he obtained Billion Mecha Empire, Manison, the success rate of building gold equipment had greatly increased. He had to admit that the exclusive ability of the Mecha Empire was really useful, but the main reason was still money. Thinking back to when he had just entered the universe, he could not wait to spend 1 anas. Now, he could not even be bothered to look at a business that was less than 50 million anas. Perhaps this is growth, Han Xiao thought to himself. Although saving Lodhair was important, he did not plan to go there personally. The journey was long, and it was enough to let the local branch's mechanical army bring along the Lord's avatar. He had already made all the arrangements, and there was nothing else he could help with. At this moment, Han Xiao was sitting cross-legged 5 meters above the ground on the rooftop of the Black Star Palace's main base. There were dozens of circular mechanical devices of various sizes floating around him. From Han Xiao's point of view, every ring had 1 to hundreds of stars in it. Hazy light rays rose from the rings like a layer of energy filter, sifting out specks of light from nothingness and landing on the surface of Han Xiao's body. They melted and were absorbed by his skin. He had created this scene because he was practicing the Dragon Emperor Star Power Absorption technique that Ames had given him. The circular devices beside him were training aids that he had created. They were called Star Power Converters, and they could increase the effect of a single training session. Exhaling a breath that contained starlight, Han Xiao felt the energy flow in his body. His cells seemed to be wrapped in a layer of hazy starlight. He could not help but smack his lips in admiration. TSK, The effect of this energy training technique is even better than Heber's stellar furnace training technique. Aim's creative ability is not bad. She really gave me a surprise. No super would complain about having too much energy. Even the beyond grade, as with unlimited energy recovery, would not stop training their energy. Every increase in the upper limit was a widening of their limit. Han Xiao was no exception. He had always paid attention to this aspect and often searched for various energy training techniques. Originally, among all the energy training techniques, the one with the best effect was the Heber's stellar furnace training technique, which increased the upper limit of his energy by 16,750 points. However, its position was now replaced by the Dragon Emperor Star Power Absorption technique. This energy training technique increased one's energy by 800 points, and the upper limit was 800 times. The effect of a single training session could increase one's energy by 30 points. In the most ideal situation, it could increase one's upper limit by close to 25,000 points. Such a good effect could definitely increase one's energy level by another level and obtain a new layer of attribute bonuses. The increase was huge. Even with radiation absorption, which could increase one's energy by just hacking, after 30 years of accumulation, it only increased one's energy by about 16,000 points. It did not exceed the Dragon Emperor Star Power Absorption technique. However, the increase in his basic attributes was quite significant. So far, radiation absorption had accumulated a large amount of strength, agility, and endurance. Old Manison had once said that the strength of a mechanic came from their foundation. The longer they lived, the stronger they would be. This talent was the perfect interpretation of this sentence. After the single training session ended, Han Xiao put away the star power converter. As he went downstairs to his office, he opened the forums to take a look. There was still some time before the date of the battle, but almost all the guild alliances had responded. The impact was obvious. The sales of the army's faction store soared, and a bunch of army players finally stopped saving money and started buying to increase their strength. Han Zhao's efficiency of receiving experience in the past few days had skyrocketed. On the other hand, the preparations for the 4th Pro League had already begun. It had attracted a lot of attention and indirectly strengthened the player's desire to shop, giving him an assist before the end of the version. At this rate, not only will I be able to save enough experience to advance to level 340 by the end of version 4.0, but I'll also have quite a lot left. Han Xiao was quite satisfied. This time, a blonde figure walked out from the corner in front of him. When she saw Han Xiao, she was stunned for a second. Then, she went from jogging to sprinting, dribbling the ball into Han Xiao's arms like a swallow returning to the forest. Uncle, Aurora buried her head in Han Xiao's arms. How old are you already, and you're still acting like a spoiled child in front of me? Han Xiao ruffled Aurora's hair and pushed her away. In front of you, I'll always be a child. Aurora giggled. She did have the right to say that. The abundant life energy allowed her to maintain the youthful feeling of a young girl. Han Xiao covered her head with his large hand and asked, "How's your progress?" "I think it's pretty fast." Aurora raised her hand and released a ball of life energy. The light seemed to be a little brighter. "Let me check." Nanoparticles surged on Han Xiao's fingertips, forming a metal needle. He pierced it into Aurora's arm, revealing her combat information. Her attributes were displayed. After taking a look, Han Xiao nodded with satisfaction. Ever since Aurora became the host of the Holy Light Particle, Han Xiao had hired a large number of employees to be in charge of cultivating the Holy Light seeds for Aurora to absorb and increase her strength. The effect was very obvious. The unique characteristic of the Life Esper ability allowed Aurora to have no bottleneck. As long as she accumulated enough, she would be able to advance naturally. Thus, the method of harvesting leaks with the Holy Light Particle was extremely suitable for her, allowing her to improve at a godly speed. With her current growth speed, Aurora would not need hundreds or thousands of years to advance to the beyond grade A realm. This time would probably be shortened by %. Not bad, not bad. I'm very satisfied with your progress. Keep up the good work. Now go and play. Han Xiao smiled. Humph, I'm doing serious things in the army, not playing. Don't always treat me like a child. Aurora wrinkled her nose unhappily, turned around, and ran away. Han Xiao. Just now, you said you'll always be a child, and now you're blaming me for treating you like a child. What's going on? Women's hearts are really fickle. It's even harder to understand than Manison's felon technology. Han Xiao shook his head, and could not be bothered to chase after her. He turned around and returned to his office. As soon as he entered, his communicator rang. He opened it and saw that it was actually a call from Kasui. Han Xiao casually sat back on the throne, leaned back lazily, and answered the call. Yo, old Kasui, you rarely contact me. What's the matter today? Let me ask you, do you have time recently? Why are you asking me out? You can say that. I plan to explore a special secondary dimension and hope to find a mechanic to form a team. It would be best if you're free. Han Zhao's eyes flashed. He sat up a little and asked, Why don't you look for Manison? I remember that your relationship with him is pretty good. He's not in a good situation recently, so it's not convenient to look for him. In comparison, you're my first choice. You're more suitable for this operation. Oh? Why am I more suitable? Because that place is very dangerous. I need some meat shields at the front, so, you know. Kasui coughed dryly. Han Xiao could not help but cluck his tongue. No wonder you're looking for me. It turns out that you've taken a fancy to my tankiness. What's there to hide? You can just say that you're craving my body. How dangerous is that secondary dimension? I've never explored it, so I don't know the specifics. However, it's definitely very dangerous. Even beyond grade as will be threatened. Who else is going? Just you and me. I don't want too many people to participate in this operation. Hearing this, Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. He felt that Kasui's trip was definitely not as simple as an exploration, and he did not know what secret goal he had. That's about it. Black Star, when are you free? In a few months. You also know about the matter between Moto and me. I don't have the time to do anything else for the time being. Are you in a hurry? I'm not in a hurry. I can wait for you, but don't make me wait too long. That's easy. If you deal with Moto together with me, I'll be free in advance, Han Xiao teased. Hee, you'd better go fool someone else. Kasui smiled faintly, indicating that they were both smart people, so there was no need to be so flirtatious. This time, Han Xiao changed the topic and said, It's not a problem for me to accompany you, but you have to at least show some sincerity. What kind of reward do you want? As long as it's not too excessive, I can agree to it, Kasui said. Now that you mention it so suddenly, I really don't know what to ask for. Can you make a few more requests? No, just one. Kasui's expression did not change. I haven't thought about it yet. Han Xiao shrugged. This was a favor from Kasui, and he did not want to waste it easily. Anyway, it's still early. Take your time to think about it. Just tell me when the time comes. After reaching an agreement, Kasui did not delay any longer and hung up after a few words. Han Xiao put down the communicator and pondered. Amazing. Even Kasui has to find teammates to share the risk. What's the situation in that secondary dimension? Is it really that dangerous? It was a pity that the mission had not been triggered yet, and he did not have any additional clues for the time being. After thinking for a while, he still had no clue and kept this matter in his heart. In the next 10 days or so, the Moto civilization searched for Lothair without restraint. However, the progress was not smooth and accidents happened frequently. The forces that the Red Empire left in Moto kept causing trouble, hindering the Modo civilization's search operation both openly and secretly. However, they also lost a lot of people and were captured by Modo for interrogation. Under such circumstances, the assassins in Modo all stopped their actions and went into hiding, afraid of being implicated. They all sighed at how bold this fellow assassin of the Modo leader was. Being heavily pursued, Lothear's experience played a huge role. He kept hiding his tracks, avoiding wave after wave of pursuers. He had a lot of stealth abilities to begin with, and he also had the bonus of the intermediate luck glow. Along the way, he did not encounter any danger and met up with the mechanical army that Han Shao had snuck into Modo. The mechanical army successfully sent the king to Lothair. With the help of this gold equipment, he directly teleported away and was completely out of danger. He would not be found by Modo again. However, the Modo civilization did not know any of this. They were still chasing after him. However, a few days later, the peaceful upper echelons changed again. Due to the death of one of the Modo leaders, one of the three kings was missing. The tribe that this position represented was very dissatisfied and did not want this situation to continue. Therefore, with the help of various parties, a candidate quickly took over and filled this vacancy. For the time being, the organization returned to the three kings. However, this new leader seemed to have a different political view from the old two kings. He did not agree with continuing to attack the flickering world. On the other hand, due to various political factors and interests, the opposition seemed to have grown stronger. Marco and the other upper echelons of the original opposition, who were severely investigated, were all released after being cleared of suspicion. Under the protection of some political force, not only were they not punished, they were even more determined to oppose continuing to participate in the flickering war. The upper echelons of the Modo civilization changed again, but this time, it was different from the public impeachment. The public did not know the truth. They only found out that the officials had been transferred very frequently during this period. No outsiders knew what kind of political conflicts and compromises the upper echelons of the Modo civilization had. They only knew that half a month after the assassination, the Modo civilization publicly released the current investigation report. The report did not mention the names of the three universal civilizations and the Black Star Corps. It only said that many suspects had been caught and that there had been some progress. However, it did not go into detail about what the progress was. At the end of the report, the Modo civilization changed the topic and said that they would suppress all the foreign terrorist organizations that claimed to be responsible for the assassination. They said that these organizations were provoking Modo's reputation and were very suspicious. Under the Modo civilization's manipulation, the public opinion in the country was vented toward these foreign terrorist organizations. The hatred was transferred to them. On the other hand, the spies and mechanical troops that Han Shao left in the Modo Expeditionary Army's territory noticed the other party's movements. Expeditionary Army fleets sailed away one after another and disappeared from their territory. Very soon, not only the Black Star Corps, but the three universal civilizations and the Supercluster Alliance also noticed this situation. Although it was not explicitly stated, everyone could guess what happened to the Modo civilization. The Modo Expeditionary Army was retreating. The opposition forced the emperor to abdicate, the domestic situation was unstable, and there might be all kinds of traps behind the assassination. In the end, the opposition gained the upper hand and forced the two kings of Modo to compromise. They ordered the withdrawal of the Expeditionary Army and decided to give up on participating in the flickering war. Another, simpler way to put it could be summarized. The Modo civilization had been eliminated by Black Star. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.